If everyone could take your seats, please. Can you ask him if it's
Is this a TV timeout?
Right, TV timeout.
There we go.
okay?
Right.
Thank you.
That easy.
I call to order the regular meeting of the Board of Education of Community Unit School District 201, today, March 22nd, 2011. Roll call, please, Mrs. McMahon.
Ms. Casey?
Here.
Mr. Charleston?
Here.
Mrs. Charlton?
Here.
Mrs. Hancock?
Here.
Mrs. Lubeck?
Here.
Mr. Price?
Here.
Mrs. Thomas?
If we could stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. First item on the agenda is approval of minutes. The chair will entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the February 22nd, 2011 regular meeting of the Board of Education as presented.
So moved.
Can we
Second?
All in, oh, I'm sorry.
Can we
Did you have
discuss
something?
one of the items? Oh, I'm sorry, we're talking about minutes. I'm sorry. Never mind.
Did you have something?
We're good.
Okay, who moved?
I moved.
And second?
Yep.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. The chair will entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the March 8th, 2011 regular meeting of the Board of Education as presented.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. Then your orange folder. The chair will entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the March 17th, 2011 special meeting with the Board of Education as presented.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Judy, I abstain.
Motion carried. The chair will entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the first closed session of the March 17th, 2011 special meeting of the Board of Education as presented.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Judy, I abstain again.
The chair will entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the second closed session of the March 17th, 2011 special meeting of the Board of Education as presented.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Abstain.
Motion carries. Are there any public comments? Okay. We'll go right into the consent agenda then, please. If the board will look under 1.5, there is one item amended in your folders for approval of retirement requests. Are there any discussions about this?
Which items?
Number 1, 5, approval of retirement request. In your orange folder, there's an addition.
And are we discussing any?
Did you want to, if you want to discuss something, yes, which would you like to talk
I
about?
just wanted, I don't want it removed, I just wanted to discuss item number 5, approval of the audit fees.
Go ahead.
Okay. The only thing that I
Number
just
5,
wanted.
you said?
Yeah.
Okay.
The only thing that I wanted to talk about on that was I had asked Mr. Carey how long we've used this audit firm, and he did say that this, we're in the 5th year now for this firm.
That's correct.
And- Right. And so I just wanted to make a suggestion that maybe for next year, the board go out to bid and, get bids on another audit firm, because it's usually good practice every 3 to 5 years to use a different audit firm. Not that, there's been anything wrong with their services, it's just kind of best practice to rotate using audit firms, audit services every 3 to 5 years.
Sure. Sure. That sounds like it.
Yeah, and as a matter of fact, Kim had mentioned that she would like to go through that process for next year, is go out to a request for a proposal to take a look at audit firms.
Okay, great. Thank
Okay,
you.
great. Was that it on that item?
Yes.
Okay. Anybody else have anything in the consent agenda?
No.
No? Okay, then the chair will entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as amended. Number 1, personnel recommendations. 2, appointment of school treasurer. 3, approval of SACID lease. 4, approval of ombudsman contract. 5, approval of audit fees. 6, approval of working cash funds transfer. 7, approval of amended 2010 through 2011 school calendar. 8, approval of student tours request, and 9, ratification of regular payroll.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please, Mrs. McMahon.
Ms. Casey,
Yes.
Mr. Charleston,
Yes.
Mrs. Charlton.
Yes.
Mrs. Hancock.
Yes.
Mrs. Lubeck.
Yes.
Mr. Price.
Yes.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is the capital projects list. And I see we have Steve Cashman and Mike Mayoris here, if by chance there's any questions.
And just kind
Start.
of, sure, as kind of an introduction, the board had asked for myself, Kim, Mike, and we also engaged Steve Cashman as well as our Building and Grounds Committee to take a look at the facility, the capital development. And just for clarification, this is separate from the long-range facility planning. So these are projects that were identified, and for the most part, these are projects that either A, the priority requires us to address them prior to the long-term remodel renovation program, or these are projects that, there would be no lost money. By doing these projects, we'd still be able to recoup the equipment and so forth. What we're looking for this evening, and what you're looking at this evening, well, you have in your orange folder is a list from March 3rd, and so then tonight's March 16th, so you can kind of see some of the changes that have been made. One of the things that we did do after some conversation, the fire alarm systems for Manning, Miller, and South, our recommendation would be that we take those out and apply for an amendment to our life safety. We currently have about $800,000 in life safety, which could cover those expenses, and therefore we'll stretch our capital development dollars a little bit further, because right now, when you look at the total number of projects that we go all the way through 2014, it's about 2.6 million, and we don't have 2.6 million in capital development bonds that were sold as working cash bonds. We're probably working around 1.8 million, somewhere in that neighborhood. And so by pulling those expenses out, that helps us stretch those dollars a little further. And basically what we're looking from the board this evening is we're kind of running up against a timeline. Summer is the optimum time to complete these projects, and so we're looking for approval from the board to take a look at. Right now, we're just focusing on the first set of projects, which the summer 2011, which would total $534,900, and then also we would also be working on those fire systems out of life safety for an additional $350,000. So roughly about $880,000 in summer work. And again, these are capital projects, and the way school funding works, bonds were sold for capital development projects, and you cannot use those dollars for any other expenses other than something that would fall under that title of capital development. All these projects fall under that. And so that's why, in case anybody's wondering, why not shift that to help with the deficit in the Ed fund or something like that, legally you cannot do that. You cannot utilize, you'll be penalized if you try to utilize the bonds in that manner. So they have to be used for projects. And so that's what we're kind of looking for this evening is, approval to go forward with projects for 2011.
Kevin, with the life safety money, were there projects, you said there's 800,000 there, were there projects that were specified for that? Other than, because these aren't, and this is
Right.
kind of a big chunk of money here.
Right. The only projects are remaining at South.
Okay.
And because of the change in utilization, those projects are no longer a priority.
And what's the time frame in which we have to use the $800,000 that's left?
I'd have to check and see when typically, your life safety, you work in a 10-year span. And so you do every 10 years a study, and then the goal is to complete all your projects prior to that next study. And Mike, when would be our next?
I believe 2016 issues.
So this is the dollar amount until 2016 or 2017?
For life safety.
For life safety, that's what I
Right.
mean.
Correct.
Do we see any, I know that we're focusing right now on 2011. Are there other items in here that would be considered, like 2013, an ADA lift? Or do any of those potentially fall under life safety? Or is that a different?
Those are things you would have to consult the school board, the Illinois State Board of Ed.
Okay.
You'd have to consult them to see what they would or would not approve.
Kevin, the first item on the 2011 list is the smoke doors, which it says is recommended by the Westmont Fire Prevention Bureau. Are those not in conjunction with the fire alarm system? They're not able to be moved over to life safety, or?
The doors aren't, no.
No, they're not.
Qualified under life safety, no.
Okay, so we have $1.8 million in these capital projects. And just looking at these prioritized lists, I guess the question for us to discuss is what priority do we want to take under on these lists? Is that
Correct.
Fair.
Correct. And what Mike did for us was kind of take a look at those projects and kind of came up with a prioritization.
So to be clear, this is the recommendation of the administration and with respect to 2011, 2012.
With respect to 2011, 2012.
And I guess the question I have is, there's a list that we have on the 3.3 that was an initial draft capital improvement schedule. And now we have one on 3.16, and going through them, there are some differences in addition to this life safety money. So there's been discussions, shifting items
Right,
here and there on these lists. Okay.
Right. And the reason for some of the movement was based upon some of the needs of the district, and also, for instance, I think one of the items is the spectator fence for the baseball fields. And evidently, and Mike, if you can if I misspeak, please correct me, but dugouts were moved at some point in time. When the dugouts were moved, the fencing was never extended, and because of that, now there's the possibility of spectators, being hit by balls and different things. So ideally, when the dugouts were moved, that would have been the opportune time to extend the fence.
On the comments, it says that cost could be reduced to 4 or 5 if we were able to do the project in-house. What's the contingency for us to be able to do the project in-house?
In-house, we had with materials, that was about $3,800 on there, so just slightly under $4,000 for us to do it in-house.
So is there any reason we wouldn't do it in-house, I guess is my question?
We originally just had proposals, we came up with that as a second alternative in case, the dollar amount wasn't, acceptable, so.
I mean, it's half.
Right.
So labor would be half.
Right.
Well, I'm just trying to figure out if it's as easy as it looks, or if there's something I'm missing. It's half.
Time consuming, absolutely, on there, so, depending on the season it's done, it's getting more difficult to do it in the spring now because their baseball programs and softball programs are now in effect, so it becomes a little more difficult at this point, so eventually it could fall for us to do it in-house. Summer would be ideal for us at this point, so.
I think part of it as well, Shannon, is timing. If we're willing to, wait for the summer, then obviously when we're developing the schedule, it can be done with our personnel. If there's a desire that it needs to be done sooner, then we may not be able to use our personnel just because they're not available, so.
And how long, do we know how long ago the dugouts were moved? Roughly, I mean, 5 years? 5 years.
Correct.
So we're talking about the difference between 10 grand now or 5 grand 3 months from now?
Correct.
After a 5-year.
Those estimates were from last
Right.
fall, so.
Just checking. Want to make sure it really looks like what it actually looks like.
That is
Okay.
correct.
And so the fence goes from the backstop area, out past the dugouts, all the way to the,
Just past the first base, basically just past the first base or third base.
Okay.
So it's twofold. It's to protect the spectators and also for overthrown balls on there. So from a competitive nature too on there, it's actually acts as a backstop if the catcher's misses a ball or is misthrown or something. It acts as a backstop so that it prevents the game from not being competitive on there because it actually has an area of the ball stop. Most ball fields have that fence there on there. Ours currently does. So if there's an overthrown ball or anything like that and the catcher misses that, there's at least there's an obstacle there for the ball to hit on there and still give them the ability to keep the ball in play, I should say. So.
is this like a 6 foot or an 8 foot or?
Generally a 6-foot fence on it.
And where do spectators stand now?
Generally, the majority of them have been behind the backstop or on the far side of the dugout, which then prohibits them from actually seeing the players at the base, at home base too on there. So there's a view issue too currently with where the spectators are actually viewing the games from. It's come strongly from the coaches too, so that's really been the driving force behind it.
And linear feet wise, how long is that?
From the backstop to the dugouts is about 60 feet, and then from, depending on the hardball field, I believe it's 75 feet from the dugout to the first base line or third base line, and I think it's 50 then from the dugout to the first or third base line on the softball field.
And when you get materials estimate for something like that, is that just like from Home Depot or something?
Yes, I believe we also got one from Discount Fence, I believe.
Mike, is there any chance you could come to the mic just as long as you're,
I believe we got one from Discount. I believe Home Depot, which is a slightly, the grade is not as, the quality is not as good. It's not a commercial grade product on there. So I believe we got one of our costs were from Discount Fence too.
are you done? I have a couple questions about the boilers. I see that this year, item number 3 has replaced boilers, and then on 2012, especially since, some of these boilers are like 30 years old.
Yes.
Is there any savings to doing it all together?
You know,
Or,
one potentially is done by a mechanical contractor, the other one would be done by a plumbing contractor, so, not necessarily on their, they could be done in conjunction with, but, is there guaranteed savings? No, so.
So a couple questions about the boilers.
Yes.
It's mentioned here that the boilers are 30 years old. What's the average life expectancy if they're maintained properly?
Well, generally, boilers anywhere at 20 years old, they generally look to either rebuild them or replace them, anything after 20 years old. These are domestic hot water boilers, so they become very corrosive just by the nature of a hot water, a domestic hot water boiling system. So, we've had numerous issues with heat exchangers and lines holding tanks on there too. So we just feel it becomes, those are primary for our kitchen and our athletic locker rooms too, so.
And the heat exchangers, are they cracked or damaged, or are they just
Well, they
wearing?
corrode actually on there, and actually, the whole unit actually is starting to get substantial rusting on there, so we're just concerned at some point in the near future, we're gonna have a significant issue with them, so.
And is the replacement cost a like replacement?
Yes, that originally that was just the boilers itself on there.
And have you had them inspected by a plumber or somebody?
Well, they're inspected annually by the boiler safety vessel from the state of Illinois, so.
Do we have a recommendation from them or any?
They generally don't make recommendations on there. They'll just give us write-ups if there's a faulty valve, relief valves, or if there's something on there that doesn't comply with current codes.
And have you seen an increase in the things that we have to replace on those units?
Not necessarily on there. Generally, they don't, we try to keep them up to code. They forewarn us on there if there are code-related issues that are going to be forthcoming, so we try to make necessary adjustments based on that information.
And the 20 years you mentioned, is that manufacturer?
Generally,
20
manufacturers,
years,
mechanical
or?
contractors, most of them tell us that, and we've had a couple issues with our regular hot water boilers on there. We've already had rebuilds on there too. So we feel that anytime after 20 years, they do become an issue on there. So we want to be proactive on our objectives for long-term effectiveness with them.
can I just ask, you said 20 years, right?
Yes, correct.
And these two are 30 years old?
They're 30, yes, that's correct.
Now, the ones at the high school that are being delayed a year,
Yes.
okay, do we have any money set aside should something happen to those?
Well, the only alternative we have is on the other ones, which are our heating boilers on there. They're sectional boilers. What happens is if it's a cracked section or a leaky section in between, the boiler has to be disassembled and then that section replaced and then reassembled on there. Generally, those costs are $20,000 or greater for that type of work on there, and the hope is that doesn't occur during the severe winter months for us too. So, that's our only option that we have with something like that.
So those boilers that are on the 2012 list are not domestic?
No, they're not. No, they're
industrial.
actually heating boilers itself. Yes.
And what's the average or projected lifespan for that?
Well, again, they recommend anything after 20 years on there that we start either doing a rebuild on there or look at our replacement options on there.
So I'm just curious as to why we're waiting on those. We were confident or semi-confident that those are going to.
Well, just priorities on there, and again, it was something that we had originally on our 2012 through 2017 5-year list on there. So it's just something we felt we wanted to get it on the list because we felt the importance of it. At some point, we really needed to address it too. So. Anything can happen with them. It's hard to predict on there, but the sooner the better for us is the way we look at it. So we just want to make sure we address those because they're critical for everything that goes on in the high school. So as far as heating abilities.
And are you doing more or less work on either set of these boilers as far as maintenance and maintaining them?
We do annual maintenance on there, just cleaning things out on there, blowing them down, just making sure that, that they're operating, cleaning the burners out, making sure the relief valves work on there. So we do annual maintenance on there. That's probably the extent of what we do on there, so.
I mean, because in theory, the commercial grade should have a little more durability and wear and tear.
Oh, most certainly.
To speak to Kathy's question about priority, if you've
Yes.
got domestic grade boilers that are already past what is the useful life,
Yes.
the commercial grade or industrial grade should
Yeah, and these are commercial grade on there, so, again, and that's the recommendation, is anything after 20 years and up on there, that,
So both of them have, passed their
Oh, yes,
useful life,
absolutely,
but,
yes, that's correct. yes.
Commercial grade potentially has more
more.
life in it
right.
from a durability standpoint.
And again, those are important because they supply hot water for our kitchen and for our locker rooms too, so they're a critical piece of equipment for us, so.
Okay.
Well, I went through the list and really, and I know I've shared that with people who have emailed me about particular items. I think given our funds and what we have before us, I kind of categorize things as either security and safety, critical maintenance issues, or projects that would improve the educational environment or the general school environment during the day for the students. And so I went down the list and categorized most of them, except I didn't really know how to categorize the bleacher repairs at the junior high and the motorized repair of the north bleachers. So are the starting with the junior high,
Yes.
bleacher repairs, upper bleachers, and it says repair of pull-out mechanism. Is it no longer functioning at all, or is
Yeah,
it
it was
just?
based on our inspection, it was recommended from the bleacher inspection company that actually, that service be performed on that.
That's the junior high one?
That's correct, yes.
But as you use them, it's functioning fine.
Yes, it has problems. The alignment on there would be the biggest issue on there, so.
And then the high school, motorize and repair the north bleachers.
That's correct.
And it says mule used out to pull the section out.
That's
And then-
correct, yes.
And that's in place of it being motorized.
That's correct, yes. We had motorized one section of them about 8 years ago on there, but we didn't have funding to do the other side. And when you motorize it, you connect all 4 sections together, so it creates a more stable bleacher setup on there. So our hope is that we could do that on there because it'll minimize repairs and hopefully give us a longer lasting product.
How frequently are they repaired?
Oh, gosh, generally every 2 years on there, I'd say. The frequency was a little bit longer. Now the ROE recommends that we do annual inspections on there, so generally it was every other year, but we do them every year now.
Are you good there? Great.
Yeah, go ahead.
I have some more questions. So I noticed across the years, there's roofing,
Yes.
generally
absolutely.
placeholders
Absolutely,
for
yeah.
roofing.
Yes.
It seems to me that the piece that kicks off the roofing is this year doing a roof inspection and report.
Yes.
When was the last time it was done? What was found? Can you just talk a little bit about?
Last roofing report we had done, I believe, was 2003.
And what was the outcome of that? Did we do work?
2003?
2003,
Okay,
yes.
thank you.
Actually, we had undertaken some roof work, substantial roof work at the high school, junior high school, and Miller School, based on that report, yes.
And the lifespan of that work?
Generally, those are EPDM roofs on there, 25 years. It's generally a Firestone warrants the roof for 25 years on there, the product itself on there, so.
So are all 3 of those buildings in that category then?
Yes, they are.
And how often do we recommend these inspections be done?
Well, the inspection should probably be done, I would, every 5 years on there. I think we've gone a little bit longer than that, but I think it's a good idea. We're fortunate to have an ex-roofer on our payroll, so that helps greatly on there, one who actually specializes in rubber roofs, so we're able to do what we think is a very good job of maintaining them on there. But when the product breaks down, there really isn't much we can do about that too. So I mean, it's just the lifespan that was built into it, so then we want to look at addressing that.
And the placeholders across each of the years, what is that dollar amount based on? History, experience? Yeah, I mean,
Oh, I'm sorry, for the maintenance part of it?
yeah, each year you have kind of a placeholder in there for the roof.
Yeah, we just, we put in basically that was more or less just for a maintenance on there. We just put it in there as a temporary, just to put a slot in there, so, because we knew potentially there are gonna be implications, things that we're gonna have to address based on that roofing study too, so. So the roofing study is just a prelude to what we may want to undertake in the next 5 years.
Can I ask Good question. I noticed on 2012, it says roof repairs at the high school, 70,000. Repair or replace metal mansards.
Mansard,
and,
yes.
So, again, because of that, I mean, obviously, you know, there's only so much time in the summer.
Yes.
Is there any reason that maybe that should be moved up, other than just?
Well, it's been a reoccurring problem since the building was built, actually, so, and, you know, we need some specialized people to come in, some specialized roofers or sheet metal workers, actually, to really look at that, engineers potentially to look at that, to try and resolve that too, so, but we had, the number there was originally for replacing some of the panels on there, that was the thought of doing the repairs on there, but we want to probably look at it a little more extensively, so we potentially might have an engineer or somebody take a look at that to see if we can find a better way of resolving that problem.
Because I do know you have each year roof repairs, so it's budgeted for each year, so
That's correct.
maintenance.
Yes, it is.
But it almost seems that if, you know, especially since none of our plans here are to really, you know, redo the high school other than internally, is there any reason why that wouldn't be done this summer?
Well, our hope is that based on our roofing study, that they'll have the ability to make some recommendation to us on what potentially, you know, what we can do with that on there, or what we need to look at, or who we may need to contact in order to make sure we get the specific information in order to correct that problem, so.
Does that include options for different type of material, different structure, so that maybe we don't?
For the mansard itself on there?
Mansard.
Potentially, I think that's something we may want to look at too. I don't know if there's, you know, if an asphalt shingle is a better option for us or not.
But will they tell us? I mean, that's one of the outcomes
I
of
hope
the
that,
study.
yes, absolutely. I would hope that we'll look at every option available to us and assess that and find out if that's actually the best product for that application, absolutely.
You know, Mike, I have a question. We have also in our binders, 5-year capital expenditure plan beyond 2015.
Yes.
And I noticed that there's a footnote that some of these are new additions in 2011.
Yes.
I'm wondering, specifically, there's 3 things on there, or a couple of things on here. And I'm wondering if there are new items on there, is that something that we should be looking at? Specifically, like one is corrosion of pipes. Can this last beyond 2015?
I think that was at Manning School on there.
Yeah.
Yeah, so and based on the recommendations on the renovation, originally some of the money from the working cash money was earmarked for repairs of that, but based on the renovation and repair study on that, we felt it was probably wise to hold off until we got more information based on that.
Okay.
So, but I know part of that working cash money originally was, that bond money was earmarked for repairs on that though.
Okay. My question was just, you know, based on, like, whatever it gets done here, it would be a couple of years, but would that last a couple of years?
Yes, you know, my feeling is if the potential committee that may be formed to look at the renovation projects at the elementary schools and high school, if there is no action taken on there, I think that we would like to come back and re-look at our 5-year plan, and then potentially address those issues, or some of the significant issues that may be occurring right now in those buildings. So we may want to look at moving things around a little bit on there to say, yes, we do need to address the pipe issue at Manning, some of the electrical issues potentially too on there, so.
And then the other item right there is this tuck pointing and plaster work, leaking above lintels?
Yes, the window lintels on there.
What is
so.
that? What is?
It's actually, it's a plate actually that's just above the
Okay.
windows on there, so we.
Okay.
Basically, potentially it's a masonry issue on there,
Okay.
so, but we have to do some more investigating in order to identify that.
Okay.
Now, in a couple of places, there's some improvements to the washrooms.
Yes.
And I know when we toured the high school, there was an issue with the washrooms off the commons area with the
The partition.
partitions being
Yes.
so low that it really prevented any reasonable privacy.
Yes,
Has that been fixed
that's
already?
been corrected, yes,
Okay.
it most certainly has, yes.
In looking at some of these, obviously, we have this capital projects money, but, you had some you had some idea, you had categorized your items. The one thing I saw on this list past 5 years was the glass enclosures for the commons at the junior high.
Yes.
And that's in our book, it says noise reduction to reduce the noise of those classrooms closest to the commons during lunch periods. And it's 25,000. That intrigues me because it sounds like that would be a benefit. I mean, none of these things are not benefits, but that just seems that's an interesting concept in terms of actually addressing.
Oh, most certainly, absolutely. It most certainly is on there.
Okay.
Currently, right now, they use the fire doors. They close the fire doors in order to prevent the
Right.
noise from filtrating into
Right.
to the academic areas right now. So, yeah, most certainly, yes, it is.
Okay. I saw that one and I thought that was,
I marked that one as well because I thought that one would, if something was going to be moved up to from what's on the list, that would improve the academic environment, and it's really kind of a reasonable cost.
Absolutely.
I think
Most
that would be
certainly, yes.
one that would be,
Yes.
up for consideration to prioritize that a little higher.
Okay.
okay, a couple of other things. I see that there was an item on the original list, the irrigation for the football field.
Yes.
That now, the first round, it was on the first year, and on 2011, now it's on 2014. I'm just wondering, is that an issue in terms of the football field? Is that a safety issue? Should we?
Well, it's not
I
a
guess I'm
safety,
wondering.
it's just, yeah, it's a time issue. The time that's spent to irrigate the football field is about 12 hours. Or in midsummer, the time it takes to irrigate is about 12 hours. So, we stagger staff around in order to make sure that the equipment's out there to try and start watering at 5 a.m. and keep that going until 5 p.m. So it's a time-saving issue.
Okay.
Potentially.
I guess I'm just wondering why it went from a higher priority of 2011 to now 2014. That sounds like something maybe we should.
Yeah, again, I'm not sure why it got to
Okay.
2014 on it. I
Okay.
think there's something we just wanted to look at, and I think that maybe, we know that the fire alarm panels were important to us, and we wanted to make
Right.
sure that I think we put those off to next year on there originally, and then, so we just, as we were looking on that, it just ended up a little bit farther back on there for reevaluation also.
And then the next item, too, was on the original list as 2011. Now it's on 2014, the junior high cabinets for band storage, and that says equipment protection, avoid falling hazard. Again, those two items used to be on at the 2011, and now they're on for 2014. And the total of those two is just right around 35,000. Is there any?
Rationale why they moved.
I'm just trying to understand. these.
We just briefly had a brief discussion about the priority level on that too, and as far as, if it was our largest priority that we needed to address immediately on there. And it was felt it's important at some point that we need to address that on there, but we thought right now on there that we didn't know that was our biggest priority to address right at the moment, so.
I guess because you have the word avoid falling hazard,
Right.
it engenders a little bit of a concern about if there's something there that we need to be worried
I
about.
think it's just a matter of, whether or not some of the equipment can be put on a lower shelf or not on there. Some just inadvertently put on a higher shelf because it was a little more convenient if we brought a few additional shelves over, that we have in district on there. We could potentially solve that problem just by doing that. So we felt that it was a short-term solution on there that we could, we could push that back a year or so at least or readdress it at a later date.
So in this instance, it would actually be cabinets with doors to lock up equipment?
That's correct, yes it is.
Is there any problem with theft or damage of equipment?
Not that I'm aware of on there. I can't fully say that, but unless somebody else has been made aware of it, I have not been made aware of it.
No, Joe, there hasn't been a problem with theft.
Okay. And the shelves in there now, do you know the depth of them? Is that
There's steel shelves on there. I would say they're 18 to 24 inches on there. I'm not exactly sure on there.
Probably
Some might
looking for
vary.
something a little deeper that would
Potentially
story?
so, may help on there, absolutely, yes. And again, some of it is inadvertently, things were put on the on the very top shelf on there, and, not all the students are tall enough anyway to remove that safely, so.
Well, I'm just wondering if there's not another option that, I mean, to meet whatever that need is, that would be much less expensive. I mean, it seems like I know I purchased shelving units at my place of employment, and, it's like $300 for, 30-inch deep, very sturdy metal shelves.
Right.
And if that solves some of the problems, then maybe that would be a
Yeah, these were comparable to
freestanding
what
shelves.
they have at the or at the high school, I'm sorry. So, I don't know if they were just looking at parity, so, they
Okay.
had something on the same level, so.
Might want to look at, I guess, the function of, exactly what they're looking for.
More on it, yes, okay.
Okay.
And I guess also on 2014, it says replace domestic hot water boiler at the junior high, one operational holding tank. That one, I guess, is holding its own for now, and that's
Right
why
now,
it's
yes, it is.
later?
Yes, correct.
Okay, also moved from the list is the scoreboard replacements, $20,000 on there.
Correct, yes.
That has also been moved. Used to be in 2012, now it's at 2011. I take it that's in conjunction with our discussion about the scoreboard?
That's correct, yes, it
Okay,
was.
okay. Because I do know that on a couple occasions, we have heard from booster members that they would do this project with or without the money from the district. So I guess we have to decide on that.
Correct, yes. Based on the committee's recommendation, it was just felt that, if we're addressing the issue of scoreboards now on there, that potentially that funding might want to be moved up
Okay.
a little bit on that. So.
Okay.
Well, and according to the list in 2010, it was slotted for the summer of
That's correct,
2011.
yes, it was.
And somehow it got put on the future year when this new list appeared on March 3rd.
So it was originally slated for 2011?
But
I don't have the old list.
Well, I have it here in front of me. It's dated April 21st, 2010. It was slotted for the 2011-2012 school year. So, and those projects are done in the summer of 2011.
But the 3-3 list that we have has both of those, the scoreboard replacement and the baseball fields on 2012.
Correct.
And now they're on.
2012 was, the list that was given to us at the committee meeting on 3-3 was a completely different list than anything we had ever seen before.
So I think what Kathy's trying to say is that it was already approved by the school board, a previous school board, for, on a 5-year capital projects list to be done. At
In
that
2011.
year, 2011.
Somehow things got shifted. I don't know how, because I didn't create the list. But there were, and then of course the new items appeared, such as the band storage lockers appeared on the list. That was something new. The the water reel for the football field, brand new on the list on 3-3 of this year. So all of a sudden, these new items got put onto the list and put right into this summer's projects. And I don't know how or why.
Well, I can speak to that because one of the questions that was asked of Mike, since the original list was compiled, have there been other needs, that he's come across? And, that's one of the things about capital development, as your buildings age and things, break down, sometimes you have to take a look at those priorities. And so some of those additions are because of Mike looking at our facilities and realizing there were some other needs that possibly we could look at.
Well, and I think a couple months ago, I think we asked to have a prioritized list
Yes, that's
of
correct,
what it
yes.
is that the administration and Mike and Steve prioritize.
That's correct.
Right?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Because we don't have that expertise. We rely on you. Okay.
Well, I'll jump in a little bit further with the scoreboard. I know I have sent some communication with the boosters about my feeling on it, and I just feel at this particular point, it doesn't fall into one of the three categories that I laid out for these types of expenditures, and neither did the seats in the auditorium, so I didn't support that particular project. So I do try to look at them with the most critical need and the student, improvement of the student environment, academic environment in mind. You know, we've had lots of talk at the board table and in the budget forums about, you know, difficult choices and you know, having courage to make these tough decisions. And I think this happens to be probably one that falls in that category. I know we heard from the community a lot about the need for a referendum to fix the ed fund and to also, you know, improve facilities. And I don't want to jump it too far ahead with our hopes that, you know, that's going to absolutely happen and then ignore, you know, the current situation that we're looking at or that we have right now. You know, I have talked to a number of residents over the past couple of weeks, and, you know, I know it's a real well-supported notion among the school and parent population, but the community, you know, certainly is going to have reservations about any kind of tax increase. And, you know, we need to really keep that in mind when we approve things that are going to raise eyebrows. I also have a little bit of an issue with, and we've had obviously a problem with the education fund, and we've had running basically deficit spending out of there. And so I think it was 2 years ago we canceled summer school, which is clearly an academic program. And we did keep all of our clubs and all of our extracurriculars because people spoke out so passionately about those. But it does make me wonder, you know, about what's really important, and are we always keeping that in the forefront? Same thing in my mind kind of applies with the capital projects fund. We've got so much need here and really not very much money to fix the needs that are there, and so that's why I prioritize things the way that I have. It would be my preference to wait, you know, to a later date to approve the scoreboard. I'd like to see us get through some of these other projects, and then, you know, closer to the end point of the capital or the working cash money. And if there's money at that point, it's a little more, I feel a little more comfortable spending it on a scoreboard because, you know, we might be able to renew those funds, sell additional bonds, and replenish that capital project money at that point. I also wondered a little bit why we couldn't, why this wouldn't be included in a referendum question at all. In fact, just fund the whole scoreboard project using a referendum. However that turns out, I mean, however that is put out there, if it does get put out there. And so there's the possibility that the boosters might not have to support it financially that way if the taxpayers are willing to include it in with, you know, school improvements at the high school building or whatever. And I just think, you know, as far as what's important to our student athletes and what they're going to remember about their experience at the high school and in the athletic programs, I'm sure they're going to remember the athletic ability of their teammates, or a great coach that they had, or particular winning plays, difficult contests and championships, the teamwork skills that they develop, the pride that they feel on the field as they're being supported by family and friends. And I don't know if, you know, 10 years from now, when they look back at their high school experience, if they're gonna say that they really, you know, the scoreboard was a real focal point for them. So I know it's an important issue for parents. I don't know if it's quite as important from a student perspective and a student perspective into the future. And so just a different way of looking at it. I know people probably aren't pleased with my particular thoughts on it, but I think it is worth putting it out there that, you know, if we are going out to our community, there are other ways to look at this particular issue. And like I said, maybe it could be funded and the boosters could use their funds for other things that you propose doing. So.
Yeah, just as an observation myself, this 30-year-old scoreboards. If the scoreboards did happen to break during an important game, then that certainly would be a story that the students got to tell for the rest of their lives.
Well, realistically, what would happen if the scoreboard broke during a game?
That's a good question. What would happen? What would happen? What would we do if the scoreboards broke down?
Would the game be canceled?
What would happen if the scoreboards break down?
What if the wind blew it down and it was down for several weeks? I mean, would you cancel the football season?
Would we replace it?
Because of that?
You'd have to replace it right away.
So can I ask a question, a slightly different question? What are the options, Kevin, I don't know if you know, but Kim's not here, what are the options for financing the scoreboard? I mean, it's not
actually,
just...
I'd like to step back, this is a second, there's another...
The scoreboard piece is another.
There's another conversation on the agenda right behind this. I mean, I'm inclined personally just to suggest, look, if this is clearly a separate discussion coming up, let's sort of leave this one be and finish that as a holistic conversation and deal with the rest of this stuff, you know, prior to that, as
Yeah, I
opposed to
think
getting onto it now.
that sounds fair.
That's fine.
Let's do that. Does that sound fair? Okay, so we'll take that off the list just for now. I guess my question comes from, what I'm concerned about is, obviously, these capital project lists are prepared, and the minute it's prepared, there's probably a couple other things that need to be added.
Yes, sir.
For instance, these 5-year capital plan things that are new.
Yes, correct.
So I worry about, you know, we only have X amount of dollars in bond money.
Right, yes.
And I know we have a lot of conversation ahead of us in terms of what we are doing with our aged buildings. So my concern is that I think we have to be very, very, very conservative as to what we spend our money on. And I think we as a board have a duty absolutely to prioritize what money we spend. And so I'm very concerned when I look at this list, which I thank you all very much for prioritizing for us. And I think I agree with much of it. I mean, obviously, there's some things I think that I definitely, if it's possible to do those baseball fences in-house, that, you know, that was one of my questions. You know, cutting that in half is huge.
Well, it most certainly is.
But what I get concerned about is, you know, some of these items here, like a tuck pointing and the leaky roof, that tomorrow we might have new things to add to this list.
Yes.
So I think this whole discussion is probably one that's going to be fluid, and we're going to be discussing every year and maybe even
Absolutely.
periodically. So I feel very strongly that we have to prioritize what we spend our money on.
Keeping in mind, I mean, I think Maria, and I apologize for the interruption, but keeping in mind that these are sort of planned projects, there are placeholders in the budget. There are placeholders in the budget for emergency repairs.
Right.
You know, some years it's been as high as $100,000 a year.
Right.
Other years it's been, you know, I think we're down around 50 or 40 or something like that right now. But so there's for stuff that breaks, stuff that's a surprise. You know, there's placeholders in the budget for that. So it's not as if we have to deal with a 5-year plan every time something breaks.
No.
This is about
I'm-
planned capital
Right.
expenditures.
And what
Adding
I'm-
as well that we have an obligation to spend these dollars by around 2015 or 2016, prior to the bonds expiring.
Right.
And at that point, we're going to, if provided there's no, just in the scenario where there's no building referendum, to deal with some of these other issues on a larger basis, if that's what plays out, then we, have to refund these bonds and there's a number of ways to refund them.
Right.
Because you don't have to do, you can do shorter-term bonds with lower principal amounts, or you can actually do, if you feel like you have $7 to $10 million of stuff that you need to do, you can extend the maturity of those bonds.
Right.
For a longer period of time. There's also non-referendum, sort of bonding capacity that the district has. So this isn't about watching the last penny, in my view. It is about appropriately planning spending the pennies we have.
Absolutely.
Realizing that there's mechanisms to deal with different things along the way.
Right.
So,
But one thing
I
that-
apologize for the
okay,
interruption.
but I absolutely agree with you, and I know that we have, emergency funds, but when we look at what's in front of us right now is we have, 2.6, give or take, 3 for the life safety dollars. And we have then additional amounts of money here beyond 2015. I'm very aware, and I know Kim has talked to this, is that we do need to spend this money. So my question is, I would like to see us spend it on what we value as higher priority, and potentially respectfully asking the administration if
Which is
maybe
what I
some
thought
of
we
these
did.
items can come up to 2011.
Which is what we did, and
Which is what we're-
we,
think,
which is what we
that's-
received.
Again, the genesis of the list is with Mike's
Right.
input.
Right.
So can I
Right.
just take a moment to say thank you very much for all the work all the meetings that you had and all the work that you put into creating this list and prioritizing everything and for answering all their questions. Because I can tell by all the answers that you gave us that you did a very thorough job. And then I thank all the rest of the staff too for the great
Well,
job
thank you.
that they do.
I just want to reassure you that our main objective is to keep the building safe and comfortable for the staff and students, and at no time do we ever allow a leak to be let go or anything that's unacceptable to myself and our staff too. And I just want to assure you that, that's never the case, and it's totally unacceptable for us too, so.
I have a quick question, just one really, on the 2012, 2013, you replaced the high school parking lot. How much is an overlay?
The overlay is probably about a quarter of the cost on there, so the base and everything is, we did an overlay over at Manning School a few years ago on there, because again, the question came up as long-term what we were going to do at Manning, so about a quarter of the cost on there, absolutely.
Thank you, Mike.
So, so what we have in front of us then is this list. Does anybody have any additional?
I have one more question, and Dan, I think it's kind of for you. So when we started, the comment was made that we have about $1.8 million, and we have $2.6 million worth of projects in front of us. So
2.6 includes the 350
Right.
that
Okay.
could potentially come out of life safety.
So call it 2.3 then. I mean,
2.2,
It's still more than
2.3,
1.8. It is, based on the comment you just made,
About the overlay, you mean?
no, well, that is one, but also an opportunity to, outside of a referendum, go after some additional bond money. Is that a prediction, or is that a reality?
No, I think it becomes, my observation, and Kevin, I think, is probably, and Kevin and Mike are, speaking as a board member, I would look at that as a sort of a last resort, but if we needed the money, there's mechanisms to go get it.
Because, this piece of paper today says we need the money, so I'm just trying to understand.
Question is how bold the word need is.
Absolutely, and how realistic is it that there's more money in some magic place that I don't understand?
Well,
And I'd like to understand.
Right, and there are, based upon your EAV, there's a formula to determine the amount of non-referendum bonds that a district could issue. The question, though, this is, we're talking about this, but then there's the bigger question that Steve is here for, and that's long-range facility planning. And I think before you tap that resource, I think we want to see where the district is going to go with that long range. Depending upon that direction, there may not be a need to tap that resource. We may want to tap it for the long-range facility planning. And so I think we want to have that conversation before we see if we want to, put more, I guess, dollars towards the capital development projects.
A perfect example of just the example of how that worked was what District 58 did with their roof bonds. They needed $5 million for roofs that they just passed that was non-referendum.
Well, and if I am understanding correctly, some of these projects are put in the later years because we're also, the board needs to decide if they go with some of these, with the renovation plans, some of these projects are going to be moot points.
Right, some of them would be incorporated into the renovation plan. And again, Mike did take a look at it and help us prioritize, so that what we're looking at for this summer, those were deemed as kind of the higher priorities.
Right.
Understanding that, you wish you could do them all, but number one, you have a limited window, you have about 6 weeks really, the summer ends up being, and then, and then also with the dollars, and then also looking at the long-range plan as well.
Right.
Having said that, the baseball fences, is that something that, because this does look like a lofty group list, obviously you wouldn't have suggested this if you didn't think, is that something that you think could be done?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. We just don't know that we would, if we did it in-house, whether or not we could get it done for while the season's in place right now. So that's our only concern on there. Potentially, that would be something as soon as the season's over that we would get done. Yes, absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
So if we know we have X amount of dollars, and we came to you and said that this is the amount of dollars,
Correct.
this list represents X plus something? What if we didn't have X plus and we just said we need a list that represents the amount of money that we have to spend? What disappears or changes on this list?
And I hope that the first 2 years of that list were some of our biggest priorities we wanted to address. Again, student safety is paramount. Number one, our fire safety codes, all that are up to where they need to be in the buildings, and we want to make sure that those are things that are top priorities. So. Student, staff comfort, are important too for us, so we just feel that those are some of our top priorities, so.
Did we approve the ADA list at Manning, or did we just say go out and get bids for it?
The lift?
Yeah.
The board directed us to go out.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
And get bids or do it?
I
forget.
Bids.
Bids.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm pretty
I just
sure it was
forget.
bid.
Or a quote, yeah.
Okay.
Right now, Garaventa is really the only one who actually makes an inclined platform lift that actually does make a full circle on a platform on there too, so there currently isn't another manufacturer. So literally, the past two that we have installed on there was not another manufacturer that was available because they're all custom made. And so we'll look at all our options with Mr. Cashman too on there, but currently that was our only option. So we always look at our options.
Yeah, I was just curious.
Kevin, did we look into whether we could use that 1.2 million state of Illinois grant for accessibility issues at the 2 grade schools for that project?
Right, and because the ADA was one of the items on that original list, yes, you would be able to use that as your offset that the district has to generate. It's a 2/3, 1/3 construction grant. The state provides 1/3. You have to have the other 2/3. And so some of those, not every project, because the original proposition to the state was somewhat generic. And so we're able to tie some of the ADA things to it. As we spend those dollars, we'd be able to credit that towards our 2/3 contribution, but not everything that we have listed.
And is that ADA construction? So these other items, like toilet partitions, would they fall under that?
Yeah, we'd be able to.
We would.
So how does that change the dollar amounts that are reflected on this list?
It doesn't, those are dollars we have to
That's
spend.
this.
It just
Okay.
means that instead of coming up with, additional dollars, we're already spending them, if that makes sense. Because the way that the way the
I'm
construction
sorry.
grant program worked, the state gives districts, qualifying districts, money for construction and renovation. At the same time, though, it's a matching grant, and so we have to, on our end, have 2/3 of the dollar amount. And so the question was, does it have to be new dollars we're spending, or can it be projects we already have in the pipeline that we're spending dollars on already? And the answer is yes, as long as they meet the original application, then yes, you'd be able to use those dollar amounts.
So by summer 2012, we have to identify all those projects for the capital board, right? Can we identify projects earlier than 12 and not have a complete list? And are we allowed to do partial draws off that commitment? So for instance, on the 150 for the ADA lift, can we be in for 100 with the state in for 50?
That's something I would have to ask and see if they would let you draw before you had all of your expenditures itemized.
Okay.
So we don't have this 1.2 million from the state. We have to ask for it.
No, it's set aside for the district.
It's a commitment.
It's a commitment. And that brings then this 2013 install ADA lift for the media center. Is that something we should think about then because of that?
That would be questionable because the original was for
The grade schools.
the grade schools.
The grade schools, right.
And so it would have to be limited
Okay,
to the
just the
grade
okay.
schools.
Okay. So we spend, so for instance, if we take, and again, I'm following up with what she was saying, if we say this one item, the seventh item is $35,000 for the partitions in the restroom, the state would maybe reimburse us for 10,000? Maybe.
Right, but
I'm sorry, the Miller one, Miller is 40,000.
Right, but I want to check to see
Okay.
if they will, I don't think they'll do it on each project. I
Okay.
think they want you to.
So we have to
Okay.
commit to spend how much to get what? What's the big picture?
Well, it's $1.2 million is the full commitment. I don't know if I don't recall if we have to draw the full 1.2 or if we
Yeah,
can
that's
just
something
do
I have to check.
like a partial draw. So, but, a big piece of that is identifying the projects that we want to submit to them, so.
Any other questions then?
I guess I'll just ask one question because I have one note on there. I see a security camera here at Manning. Was there any discussion about any additional security cameras on any of the other buildings?
No, that was just actually modifying the current one that they had there to provide a wider angle lens on there.
It's not adding any new.
It wasn't adding, it's
an
correct, it was not adding any additional.
Well, I have to say thank you to everyone who worked on it, just to pull that 350,000 out and putting that into life safety. That was very good. That was a good use of that time. Okay, so are we confident that the 2011 list, pulling out the item number 14, and then I guess we need to talk about number 15.
Well, so when you say pulling out 14,
We're going to have that discussion
talking about it
next.
after.
We're going to have the
Okay.
discussion next. But for right now, if there isn't any more discussion, we can move forward with approval of the capital projects list. But number 15, can we?
Well, this is just an estimated cost in here, and I think he
Right.
heard us loud and clear that we would like to do this in-house. So I don't think you have to change the dollar amount there.
Right,
I think
you can.
Okay.
I'm
Okay.
sorry, Maria, I realize, I have one more question. The seal coat and striping, it says, could incorporate this with SACID bid. What does that mean?
Yeah, actually, they're going out, they're pooling all the other member districts together on there, so to potentially get a better price on there, so they're pulling all their member districts together, asking them to give, if they're interested in being involved in that, so they're gonna try and get one contractor potentially to give them hopefully an exceptional number for including all these districts.
And how does that impact the dollar number that's listed here?
Well, we'll hopefully know soon on there, but the potential is it should hopefully give us the greatest savings potentially we can get, because there will be potentially the contractor will have several, I think I saw at least about a dozen other districts that were involved in that at this point on there. So pending, if that's approved on there, we're going to give the SASSET business manager the go-ahead for us to be included on that. So, and then they'll come out, they'll survey the site on there, and then pending what the outcome of that bid on there, hopefully it'll be lower than our cost, our estimate that we have originally on there. So.
Okay, any other questions then? Okay, then, let me get my sheet. On the capital projects list, the chair will entertain a motion to approve the capital projects list as amended for, at this point in time, with 14 items, to be completed during the summer of 2011.
So moved.
Second?
Okay, and roll call, please.
Mr. Charleston?
Yes.
Mrs. Charlton?
Yes.
Mrs. Hancock?
Yes.
Mrs. Luback?
Yes.
Mr. Price?
Yes.
Ms. Casey?
Yes.
Have fun this summer, Mike. Thank you again for bringing this to us. Okay, the next item on the agenda is the approval of the scoreboard bid.
And just kind of to bring the board up to date, there's been several meetings with the boosters, and then we also consulted Terry Hodges and Steve Cashman, our architect, to review the bids, because there was a question as to which bid the school district should recommend accepting, and taking a look at all the differences between the various bids and protecting the district as well. After consulting those individuals, it's in the district's best interest to go with the fair play scoreboards, and that's based upon the fact that what we currently have in place, the fact that the controllers would be the same, training of vendors would be the same. To date, we haven't had any issues or concerns with the current scoreboards from fair play. And because of the conversation we've had with the capital development plan, there's, I guess, three options for the board on the table. One is to accept the bid from Fair Play. The boosters have been working with Dave LaBrash from Clarendon Hills Bank as far as the financing. They preliminarily have been approved for financing. Obviously, once the board takes action, then they can finalize that process. There's two directions the boosters can go. They can go their own and secure the financing themselves, or the district can assist them and secure the financing. And there is a savings to the boosters in terms of the interest rate. They do get a better interest rate with the school district's backing. And then there's also the question of the $20,000 rather, whether or not the district is, I mean, not cause anybody heart failure, but whether or not to contribute $20,000 to the project. It's a $50,000 project, and whether or not to contribute $20,000 to that. And so basically, the board can just approve the bid and not contribute the $20,000, and not to assist with the financing, help secure the financing. You can approve a bid that would allow for the $20,000 and allow for the securing of the financing for the boosters. And then you can, I'm trying to remember which ones I've covered, approve the bid, assist with the financing, and not the $20,000. So.
Run that by again.
Okay, you can do, you can approve the bid.
Because I got
and no other assistance.
approve it without any kind of help.
Right, no assistance.
Okay, or
approve the
it-
bid with the $20,000 and then with the financing. So
And with
basically,
help.
with help.
Okay.
Approve a bid with help on financing, but no $20,000. And I guess there is a fourth.
Yeah.
Approve the bid with the $20,000, no help
Yeah.
with financing.
Yeah.
We have four options.
Four options. And then there was some question about, what happens if the boosters secure the financing on their own, the school district does not assist with the securing of the financing, and for some reason the boosters default on the loan, what obligation does the district have? And the agreement can be constructed in such a way that the school district can still accept the scoreboard as a gift, but not to put the district at risk if there was a default on the loan.
Well, so in other words, the bank's documents are gonna grant the district cure rights in the
Right,
event of a
right,
default?
right.
Okay. And to the extent that we offered, well, I mean, in any event, if there's financing that runs to the boosters and there's a default, we're gonna need cure rights. But in addition to that, if we actually have to exercise our right to cure, we need to, it's getting blood out of a turnip a little bit, but I'd like an indemnification to run from the boosters to the district, so that whatever's there, we certainly have a right to go after, so.
What did we do the first time when the original scoreboard was purchased? Do we know?
Was it put in with the construction of the building?
No, this is the
This is currently, it's a second.
Second one?
scoreboard.
Okay.
It's been,
So how old is this
15.
one?
It was installed 1991.
91?
Yes.
So 20 years old.
20
So
this-
how was that one financed?
I thought that there was, I don't remember there any contribution from the boosters. It was solely purchased through the district at
It
that.
was purchased by the district?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, you're the only guy here with that much tenure.
There wasn't any discussion at that point that I
Yeah.
remember. The boosters contributed to that.
So Kevin, one thing that's not here is a recommendation from Kim about whether we should back or not back. I mean, what are the ramifications of backing or not backing?
in terms of if you assist, I guess the only potential risk, if you do assist, basically the financing would be in the school district's name. So if there was a default on the booster's part, the school district would be obligated. If you don't assist with the financing, you can put in place some protections for the school district. So that's what it boils down to.
It's a difference between having an obligation to perform as opposed to a right to perform. A cure right is a right. Right? So theoretically, you could just let it all unwind. If for some reason we just didn't have the money or just chose not to or something, just something. But it's the difference between having an obligation to perform as opposed to a right to perform.
Well, considering the fact that the district purchased the scoreboard in 1991 totally, and the fact that the community and the parents and the students feel very strongly about extracurriculars, and the fact that we need to have a scoreboard here in order to have games played here, and the fact that students who may not necessarily excel at academics may excel at sports, and sports are a way for students to have an opportunity to get scholarships that are college-bound. And like I mentioned before, the fact that the district paid for the scoreboard last time, I am honored that the boosters are wanting to contribute at all to the purchase of this scoreboard. So, and the fact that they're asking the district to pay $20,000 and they're willing to finance $30,000 is even more commendable. So I feel totally in support of the school district funding $20,000.
Kevin,
This
can
is
you,
for our students.
sorry, Kim.
I just have to observe it, just to say it out loud, because it's just a point of pride as well. Not only was the girls' basketball team a great basketball team, but their GPAs were really big. So it's student athletes, are just at Westmont are something to celebrate, truly are.
Kevin, can you talk a little bit about what, or do you know the requirements around if games can be played and how the scoreboard plays into that. I mean, my very
Right.
loose understanding is we do have to have
Right.
functioning scoreboards in order for games to be played. Is that true? And
Yeah, that's true. If a clock scoreboard were to malfunction during a contest, there are provisions to, keep the clock on the field and, manually keep score. But going forward, until that was replaced, you would either have to play at a neutral site or play at the opponent's site. You wouldn't be able to continue playing without a functioning scoreboard at home.
And have we had games where the scoreboards have failed up to this point? And what do we do in the middle of the game when that happens?
I'm not aware that they had a total failure during for a total game, but potentially I'm not aware of one. That they may have partial failure, though, absolutely.
I think the indoor.
Yeah, the indoor sports did go out, and the volleyball had to keep score on the flip charts because the scoreboard went out. So we've had issues with that. With bigger issues with the outdoor scoreboard, the lighting, the horn doesn't work. There's other things that are not functioning on that board.
And the other, Mike had mentioned too, as far as controllers for the current scoreboard, you can't replace those, you can only rebuild. Is that correct, Mike?
Yeah, the modules actually have those boards on there, so they just had the last one we purchased. I think it was for one of the baseball before we replaced the baseball scoreboards. There was only used modules that were available to us on there, so literally that we were at the mercy of the manufacturer with the installer if he still had something like that. Literally the parts inventory isn't very deep, I guess I should say.
I guess I'm going to have to piggyback something that both Kathy said and Shannon. Having had an older child go through the school who was very interested in sports, I do value very much everything that's done, and I also commend the boosters on all the work that has been done to date, and I know that there's been a lot of discussions on that. And so I have to say, again, looking at the amount of money that we don't have 2.6 million. So I guess what I would say is that as far as I am concerned, I think it's very important to have the scoreboards. I think we've heard from many people. And I also have heard on 2 occasions that the boosters are willing to do this and to go forward with this on their own. So I guess I would at the same time say that this is absolutely a need that we do have, that I would thank the boosters for offering to come forward and take care of this on their own, especially since the funding has been pre-approved from Clarendon Hills Bank. I do have a concern about something you said, though, Kevin, about the district accepting a gift. So if the district does pay for some of that, and I am concerned about the future that the board, liability that the board might have. So I would have to say, whereas I think a scoreboard is absolutely necessary and it's very important, I would strongly caution us to think about what we have, the limited amount of funds we have for capital projects, and accept the boosters' stance that they would pay for this. So,
is there any, one of the things that I mentioned was I would rather see it later. Is there any possibility that later, if the boosters did take on the whole financing, that the district could decide later to pay off a balance at some future date?
That's a possibility because there's, no penalty, for paying off the loan early. So I guess that's a possibility.
It gives us a little flexibility should other needs arise, I guess, beyond the 50,000 emergency fund or whatever.
I find it interesting that when Miller and Manning came to us with the need or wants for additional playground equipment, that it was not a problem and we approved it, and didn't ask them to go out and really fundraise half or finance or whatever. And in the past, history will show you that every time there was some new playground equipment purchased, that the school fundraised and came up with half, and the district gave half. So it was half and half. And here we are again with the boosters saying that they're willing to spend more, and then all of a sudden we can't even give them part of the money. I find that amazing.
Well, it's very inequitable.
Well, while I appreciate the analogy, I don't think it's entirely, that there was ADA components, particularly at Miller. Yeah. There was ADA components at Manning as well.
Part of it.
And, Miller did fundraise a substantial amount, something like $12,000 or $13,000 that went towards that. So it's not entirely comparable in that respect. The playground projects were driven by, not just we want, but there is a need, and there are ongoing needs with respect to kids with disabilities accessing those things. Having said that, no, I genuinely appreciate your point, which is that folks went out and fundraised, and I'll observe in this case the boosters have offered to do just that, and I'm wildly appreciative of that, and I'm a big believer in the notion of co-invest. And so, in the long run, the scoreboards are the district scoreboards. I don't see any reason why we shouldn't contribute to those scoreboards. I don't see any reason why we shouldn't contribute to those scoreboards.
So I would like to make a motion that we both.
Did everybody weigh in before we?
Well, I'll just add, as far
Here's
as.
Shannon too, so.
Yeah, as far as the Manning playground upgrades, I think they were pretty specific for ADA compliance, and I don't know as if there was any improvements to the playground following the transfer of the South School students there too. So, it was probably due to have a little bit of upgrading based on that.
Well,
Well, of
that
course.
argument is,
Here
that
we are
argument
wanting
is
to
interesting.
upgrade the
'Cause-
scoreboards.
Yeah, the scoreboards are 20 years old too.
Didn't that money come from ERA money, though, the
Yes.
playgrounds?
Well, we got it approved from the.
Didn't come from the capital projects fund.
Okay. Shannon, did you want to weigh in
Sure.
before we move?
So I would say, first and foremost, we need to replace the scoreboards. I don't think it's a question. I think if you go out to the school and look, and if you listen to Mike and you listen to everybody, Mike and the facilities team had an opportunity to prioritize this list. They moved the scoreboards to the first page. At some level, we have to have some respect for that and recognize that the expert in our district prioritized this item in that way. I do think, and this is based on a variety of conversations, that scoreboards or sports-related items are probably one of the few areas in schools that we may be able to do some significant fundraising. And one of the questions that I've posed is, do we have any corporate sponsors that are helping to fund the scoreboard? When I was in the high school recently, the indoor scoreboard I noticed has a bank that no longer even exists. Obviously, how long ago that was put in, but I know that we have not gone after that particular item, and that there may be an opportunity to reduce some of the outlay, whether it's from the boosters or from us, by going after some chunks of sponsorship around the scoreboards. I do agree with Dan's statement that there are scoreboards, and I think it's a little bit, I'll be frank, I think it's a little bit ridiculous to imply that the boosters should own the scoreboards and should be out on a limb by themselves on them. I think that's inappropriate. There are scoreboards. At the very minimum, we should be backing the financing 100%. I would like to see a little bit of effort put into some corporate sponsorships. I think that we have some people in our district, we can't just rely on the boosters to go look for this. I think that we need to pool some resources, whether it's people that did the fundraising at Miller, whether it's other people that we know, and put together a group to work with the boosters and go after some of these dollars. So, I mean, at the end of the day, I'm 100% yes for the scoreboard. I'm 100% yes for backing the financing. If we can delay our dollar contribution out of the capital projects, because I do think we have a lot there to deal with, and we can provide support to the boosters through advocacy, through putting a committee together to help go after corporate sponsors, that's a fair and reasonable way to start, and it may still allow us to make a contribution to help pay down as we go through this process.
Should we start by then going back to the capital projects list? Do you want to do that first?
Well,
That
it's just this
amount?
one line item, right? It's a question of 20,000 or is it?
Because we have 4 options in front of us.
Yeah.
Okay, so let me clarify. You're in favor of supporting the financing
Absolutely.
and going after other sponsorships and paying later.
Who's going to put that committee together?
I'll do it. I'm sure the boosters would be happy to help do it.
If I may I speak?
Yes.
It's all right on the subject. Or Courtney can also speak on this, but the scoreboard project, it wasn't something that just came up within the last 6 months in regards to approaching it and seeing it. This is a project that we know that the boosters have worked on for many years. As a matter of fact, going back 15 years ago when we started the Wildcat football program, I was putting light bulbs in the board myself on the back of a pickup because we had a game before the high school did. So the scoreboard has been in jeopardy since at least 1997. We have approached businesses. We have gone out. I have solicited to the Knights of Columbus, the local organizations in town. I've also been told in a way basically to stay away from some of the car dealers and things like that in town because of the program that was started through WAG or WHAM, you know, the Westmont Auto Mile and so forth, with their fundraising towards the special events in town that everybody enjoys and wants to continue. So it's not like there hasn't been efforts made, you know what I mean, in regards to that. As far as I've spoke with Coca-Cola, I spoke with Pepsi. Since we've basically taken them out of our schools over the last 10 years, they don't want to fund, and they're not going to. They're not going to give you those coolers. They're not going to give you all that merchandise, and they're not going to back you, and they're not going to put the scoreboard up, you know, themselves like they would have 15, 20 years ago and so forth. In regards to the bank was LaSalle Bank that donated the smaller scoreboard in the gym. The other scoreboard on the other side, I believe, was purchased by the school. And in my conversations over the years, it's been told, I believe, that maybe that might be the original scoreboard in the gym. One is the original scoreboard when the school was built. And so it's not like there hasn't been, you know, and I'm not saying you know, but there has been efforts. There has been work. We have increased our fundraising. If any of you were at the spaghetti dinner, you'd realize in the last 9 years, we've given over $95,000 to the athletic program. The boosters have. $95,000 we have given and raised through athletics, through our fees, through everything that the boosters, wonderful parents, have done to help the program. You know what I mean? So to say that the reason that we said that we would basically kind of run it and do it on our own is simply because we know the need. We're the group who's affiliated, and we're the ones who are backing the athletic program. We see it. We see the scoreboard. We have kids who are like, you can't even tell the score. You don't even know what it is. You don't even know how much time is left in a game or so forth because the bulbs go out if the wind blows too much or anything. And it really is almost an embarrassing situation when you come to a game and you watch it at Westmont. You know what I mean? So over the years, it's something that we've done for so long, and we've continued just to kind of say, it's just Westmont, we'll wait. I mean, honestly, you're looking at spending $534,000 this year on your capital projects. That $2.6 million is over towards 2015, I guess, is what you're looking at. $20,000, I think, this spent this year. I don't necessarily know if that will, you know what I mean? I mean, I know it's a lot of money. I know there's decisions that have to be made. I know there are heartbreaking decisions at times. But if we continue just to say, let's put it off, let's put it off, let's put it off, or so forth, maybe not at this time, it's not a need, you know? But what happens when we're out there on that football field or on the soccer field, whenever there's a game, and next thing you know, the scoreboard's completely out? It's easy in volleyball to be able in 1 or 2 games take that flip score and do it. But in a basketball game, a high paced game and so forth, you can't use a flip chart to keep score. And it does. It means an awful lot. And in our community, in our small district, athletics is what can increase the kids' grades. You know what I mean? Some of these kids may not have an opportunity anywhere else, but to be able to participate in athletics because they have that opportunity in such a small school is wonderful and huge. And I think if we can't back that, then I don't know what, you know, I mean, who's going to. You know what I mean? And I hope I'm not stepping out of line or anything, but that's from the bottom of my heart. I'll come out there tomorrow. I'll help Mike dig holes next week if it's going to make a difference in putting these things up, the fencing up. I'll come out. We'll get a group of parents. We'll help Mike dig holes, whatever we can do. And he knows that. We're behind him 100%. We're behind the board 100%. We're behind every student and athlete in the school, not just the high school, but all of them. So we have approached organizations. I'm going back to the Knights of Columbus. They just paid off their last $1,000 on the baseball scoreboard that they bought for the Babe Ruth field. So they paid $1,000 a year for 5 years. You know, I don't want to double them up. The Lions, they don't have a lot of money. They're trying to help other people. But the Rotary, I've approached organizations. I've approached a lot of people. My dad raised millions of dollars. He was a professional fundraiser for 45 years for the Archdiocese of Chicago. I know a little bit about it. So I've approached organizations. I've worked hard at it. And it's not like we haven't. We're increasing things. We've increased the things that we do through boosters to increase the funds and the revenue that we're bringing in. You know, and you just look at it. And the things that are provided to these kids to make them feel so good about themselves that we've been able to do is a wonderful thing. And I know it's 20,000, and I know people are going to say sports doesn't matter. Some people are, but there's just because that's their passion. Their passion is something else. My passion isn't just athletics. My passion is every student in here. I don't have them. I'm not going to have anybody at the high school for a few years. You know, my daughter's leaving. She's a senior. She's gone. But I'm still going to be around. I'm still going to be here. I don't want to take any more time, but we have, just to answer your question, Shannon, we have gone out. We have approached other organizations. We have approached businesses and so forth. For the last, this is a 19-month project now that we've been aggressively pursuing the scoreboard because we knew how bad it really actually was. You know, the referees have asked us, please do not use the horn. Because honestly, it sounds like a dead animal out there, you know what I mean? And it's not only that, it's $500 to $700 just to replace the horn on it. You know, I know it's a tough decision, it really is, but it's $20,000, and you're only looking right now to spend $534,000 for capital improvements right now. It's 2.6 to get you through 2015. And with parent help and parent involvement, I know if that's allowed in the district and if people sign waivers and help out, I know that I'll be there to help Mike Mayoris and the rest of the staff to do whatever's needed to be done. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I'd like to just 2 or 3 sentences. First of all, I didn't mean to imply that fundraising hasn't happened. So I absolutely, that was not the intent. It was really more, you know that I'm new, so I have to look at it from now forward. I can't look at backwards, I can only look forwards. Personally, you know, I've put Mike on the spot a couple of times about buying a truck and doing some different things because I think that we need to be highly careful and highly critical right now. It's just the reality of where we stand. I do think that we should move forward and we should approve the scoreboard, and that should be a today and it should happen now. I don't think that there's necessarily a bad thing with putting some additional resources in with the boosters that have already spent so much time and worked so hard that sometimes a fresh set of eyes or a slightly different approach or a different connection that we may not be aware of that a person has who's not involved in boosters may be able to find a way or find something. And what I'm asking for is maybe just the opportunity to do that.
Well, I would
And
like,
still
I guess,
consider,
yeah,
I'm just
but
saying
in
that's.
terms of resolving the question and you know, trying to simplify the transaction, if you will. Because I'm inclined to agree with you that the approval should be with help on the financing, because it's 200 basis points difference in the cost of money. And ultimately, there are scoreboards anyway. I am also inclined to contribute towards it. How much and in what format is an interesting question. So I'll make a suggestion that one way to do that, for instance, may be to contribute, just to say flat out, it doesn't have to be 20, it can be, let's say, you contribute flat out 10 and agree to match, dollar for dollar, up to 5 corporate sponsorships. They can be pinned to the board.
Well, particularly as we look at the other list, Mike's team's come up with an idea to cut down those fences by $6,000. I mean, how much more can we squeeze? I don't know, but, there's maybe ways to incrementally find.
But I'd like,
Can I
but to leave
just,
the question unanswered, and I want, the answer to the question should be tangible and finite.
Can I make another suggestion? I'm not opposed to getting corporate sponsorships, but the boosters are still financing $30,000, which is still more than what the district is being asked to contribute. And it is the district's scoreboard.
Can I ask,
So
didn't the
I
boosters say
would-
they had 10,000 now?
Pardon?
Didn't the boosters tell us they had 10,000? So it's not 30,000?
They're still contributing 30,
That's money that we have in our account.
Yeah.
right. But they're still contributing 30.
Oh, right. No,
Financing.
but you said
I'm
financing
sorry.
30. I just wanted to, okay.
So what I would suggest is if they do get corporate sponsorships, and perhaps then if they are so inclined, they can give back some of that money to the school district. But I truly do not have a problem with the district funding 20 if the boosters are funding 30. Because again, I reiterate, this is the district's scoreboard. We should be contributing. And this is for our students. The fact that they're offering to give us any money at all is very commendable.
Courtney, did you want to?
Yeah, just one other point that the faster we're able to pay this off with either the 20,000 from the district, help with the financing, or help gathering other funds, what that does, it doesn't mean it's over, it frees up additional money for us to put back into the athletic programs. Because when we have this loan outstanding and we owe this monies every month, we're not going to be able to fund as many summer camps, fund as many extras that the coaches on their wish list are putting in. We're not going to be able to do that because we have the loan outstanding. The faster it gets paid off, the faster we're able to then go back to where we were and putting additional money back into the program. So, no relief payment.
Can I ask a question? Because I remember a couple months ago, Mr. Torney, when you were here, you had said that the original amount was 20,000, but for the scoreboard, and then the boosters met again, and then a couple more scoreboards were added. Is that right? That's how it got to be 50?
Yeah. The original was 30,000 for the football scoreboard, for the outdoor scoreboard. That included the scoreboard and moving it to the other end. And then for an additional 20,000, we're able to get new indoor scoreboards, both ends of the court. So that was the package of getting both was to get the $20,000 on the indoor scoreboards.
Well, I'm inclined to support the financing. I'm really hesitant on the contribution at this point, like I stated. So, I mean, I could probably split the difference, like Dan was suggesting.
I think I could do the same thing. I think I could approve. I could feel comfortable from this seat approving, understanding that we do need a scoreboard, and that if the district could help with that financing. But I worry about,
I worry about the number of projects that are on our list and not having everything, just beginning the facilities conversation and all of that, so.
Yeah, I do too.
I'm struggling right now with the notion of keeping it simple, because, I'd like the outcome to be finite. I'm not opposed to a full contribution either. So, I mean, I think the question is just amongst, we have 6 people here, we have to decide if we're okay with a contribution, and if so, how much. I'm okay up to 20. I'd love to see the boosters, you know what? I mean, at $30,000, they're contributing $30,000. That's a lot of dough.
You know,
In the
and I
interest
think-
of simplicity, I'm okay up to 20.
And what Courtney just said too, I think should kind of, I mean, it hit a chord with me. It's like, you know, they will be continuing to contribute to our athletic programs.
yeah.
Their money's not going away, you know, and for us to not be able to do this 20,000 seems pointless. I mean, because it's ultimately going to come out of the student, away from the students, the athletes.
Another comment that I know we were told before was that I know that the boosters have been meeting quite a bit about this issue. And from what I understand, I believe that that there was a commitment by the boosters to go forward with this particular project. And I just think that am I correct on that? The boosters was really behind this scoreboard. Am I right, Courtney?
Correct. Just because of how long, like John said, it's been 19 months, and not much has been happening. So we made a concerted effort among our group that we were going to take on the scoreboard project. At no point was it our intention to say, no, we don't want the district's money. Obviously, that's not the point. As you say, I mean, it is a district board. If we wouldn't take on the project, if the scoreboard would fall down, you would be on the hook to put up the $20,000, $30,000 scoreboard without any assistance. And you generally, I believe, by the NHSA, you have to do it you have to have a board within a week, or you have to change your venue or forfeit your game. So if we wouldn't do anything, the board blows down, doesn't work, then you're on the hook for everything to replace that board. So we're just looking at trying to keep it moving. We're willing to make those payments and to support the board. Obviously, it would be nice if the district continued, like we said, the initial board, it was a district board. There was no booster involvement in that, and is part of the property. So.
But I think I like what the conversation too with in terms of the Miller Playground that was raised by parents. I know recently the PTOs have been purchasing smart boards only with their funds, that are raised by the groups and that. So I don't know that anybody up here opposes, that this scoreboard is needed. I think it's that the board has a duty to look at all of our finances and everything that we have in front of us, and we have 2.6 here and we only have 1.8, and that's if nothing else gets added. So that's why I believe I can support the offer by the boosters to do the project, because we as a board have so many other things on our plate. We haven't even talked to Steve Cashman yet about the rest of it, and I know that's other money. It's just I'm sure that there's other groups out there that would come and now say they want something else that is absolutely necessary for something else.
But
So-
these are absolutely necessary.
I'm not saying they're not.
I know,
That wasn't my
I know,
point.
but then.
It's absolutely necessary.
But they've already raised over $95,000 that they've contributed to our district.
Right.
That's
I
a
agree.
huge amount of money. These other groups didn't raise
I
that
agree.
kind of money.
I agree.
Okay.
Willing to pay 60% of a $50,000 bill. You know what I mean? It's not like we're saying we have $1,000 and you give us $49. We have a substantial amount that we're willing to pay for the boards. Just feeling that, and it was originally, 5 years ago, it was in a plan, so we knew 5 years ago that the boards were an issue. They're not any better now than they were 5 years ago, so it's still an issue, and you know, it seems like the right thing to do to move forward and to support that, you know, to support.
Did you,
Well,
Kate, did
I
you
was just
wanna-
going to say someone was,
Yeah, I just wanted to point out, there is a concern with, that other people have addressed.
Can you come up
As
to
far
the
as
mic?
if we, meaning the boosters, were to put $50,000 into this project, the monies that we spend year to year on the students, we wouldn't have that money. All our money would be tied up in this. And the girls' soccer team today played at home. The weather was horrible. Every one of those girls was wearing a beautiful Westmont Sentinel rain jacket that came down, you know, mid-hip, that we donated for them because last year they were freezing. Now, those jackets are used by the boys' team too. Those are the kind of things that we purchase for them that the district, you know, the district can't. That's not monies that we can spend, but those are the kind of things we've bought: baseball jackets, golf jackets, soccer jackets, rain gear, football rain gear, things that the kids really benefit from, like the jackets today. And they looked good today. They were freezing. They were all prepared to go out there and play. So I just want to point out, the money, that $20,000 would be huge in us being able to still support the kids. Otherwise, in the next 5 years, it's going to be very difficult to do that.
so, I mean, I would like to, you know, propose that if we can get to a vote tonight that allows us to move forward on the scoreboard and allows us to put some dollar amount towards this effort, as well as an additional commitment to maybe try and have a little broader support for fundraising, that we should consider doing that. I mean, I think that we have people all the way through the whole choice here, and if we can find a middle spot to stop and we can actually allow this to go forward and stop putting it off, that would potentially be beneficial.
I think the question is who the fundraising and who benefits from the fundraising, because I mean we can still encourage that, and it would inure to the benefit of paying off the loan that the boosters already have in place. Again, you know, and you know, I've sort of evolved as I sit here, but to me, in terms of keeping the question simple, you know. I'm inclined to let them do the project, let them front the project, help with the financing, and make a clean contribution, you know, and call it $20,000, and just encourage them and help them and participate with them in raising money sufficient to pay off that loan so that they can continue to fund rain jackets and equipment, you know, and helmets, you know, for our football team. And other sport, other activities where the equipment isn't just looking good, it's about their safety too. So I'm inclined to continue to let the boosters do what they do and participate in their project.
And I'm inclined to do exactly what you're saying, except reduce the amount to 10, and
Well, can we
with
take?
possible, you know,
I would like to
wait
put a
and see.
motion. Why don't we do one motion first, and if that one doesn't pass, then we'll do a separate
Okay.
motion. So the first motion I'd like to put forth is the original motion to approve the award for the scoreboard bid to Bomb Sign Fair Play of Sheridan, Illinois, in the amount of $50,930 for the purpose of providing football and basketball scoreboards for Westmont High School as presented, and support the financing, as well as provide the $20,000.
So you're proposing the option of accepting the bid
Accepting the bid, supporting
Giving
the
$20,000
financing. Right, and.
and supporting the
20,000.
financing.
Right.
So moved.
Okay.
Second.
Mrs. Hancock,
No?
Mrs. Lubeck,
Yes.
Mr. Price,
no.
Ms. Casey,
Yes.
Mr. Charleston,
Yes.
Mrs. Charlton.
No. Okay, so that's 3-3, so the motion does not carry. So let's change that to one of the other options.
What's your amount? Are you willing to give an amount? What's your amount?
10.
Okay.
And then a commitment to try and bring some additional parent resources in to help with fundraising and finding corporate sponsors.
And who's going to do that?
I've already talked to a couple of people in advance of this meeting to find some support for that, and I have a positive result so far.
Okay, so you're going to be responsible for setting up that committee?
I will be, certainly.
Okay.
Absolutely.
If, I mean. as-
In conjunction with whatever
conjunction with-
needs to done with administration. I mean, if there's someone else in administration that has to be part of that, I don't know, but
I could live
I
with
don't
that.
know, is that really part of, that's not really part of the motion, right?
Well, I just want to know, because I don't think the boosters should have to be responsible for that. They've done enough already.
I like that thinking, and I like the fact that, again, our role, we have to look at everything. So I like the fact that we are contributing. The scoreboards are absolutely necessary for our sports, but, so I could live with that suggestion. Especially, Shannon, if you're gonna take on assisting the boosters. So I could live with that. Joel?
Yes. Do you want a motion for it?
yes.
Well, okay.
Yeah, let's,
So then.
let's get moving.
So
then
I'll
the
make the
chair-
motion.
Okay?
Okay.
To
Go ahead.
approve attachment A3, the bid as indicated, the board to put in $10,000 towards, for the purpose of providing football and basketball scoreboards for Westmont High School, and to back the financing as indicated in the attachment.
Oh, so moved. I never get that.
Second?
Mrs. Hancock?
Yes.
Mrs. Lubeck?
Yes.
Mr. Price?
Yes.
Ms. Casey?
No.
Mr. Charleston?
Yeah.
Mrs. Charlton?
Yes. So then the district will award the bid in the amount of $50,930. The board will contribute $10,000 towards that, and we will look to help secure some sponsors.
And we'll back the financing.
And we'll back the financing. I was just getting it, thank you. Okay.
I have one question, it's kind of outside of all this, but it does have to do with the scoreboard. The scoreboard is going to be placed inside the track like it is on the other end? Because I was wondering if there was a way to address the concern from we had someone come from Oakwood and Revere Drive and talk about that they really didn't want to look at a big black box out their bedroom window or whatever, and I thought if it was outside of that track, that you could either some sort of landscaping shrubs or something, nothing too elaborate, but could at least hide that from their view. So, but it's going to be inside the track, so that will be.
We stipulated that the back of it be blacked out instead of silver, so.
Okay.
Everything reflective property split, so we have minimized it.
Okay. But we can revisit that at another time, too.
Used for track and field, it has to be inside.
To be used,
Track and field,
it has to be inside.
It has to be inside the track.
Correct. So, yeah, there's really no way to, I mean, you don't want, obviously you don't want any shrubbery in there or anything like that. So.
Okay, the next item is the superintendent's report.
And I'll, so that we can get to Steve here, I'll make it very brief. First, the school district was awarded a library grant in the amount of $1,158.61, and that's based on a per diem or a per student rate that the state comes up with. And so that is dollars that need to be spent in our libraries during the next school year, 2011-2012. Just quick update on the budget reduction planning. Just we are continuing to take a look at the co-curricular program. Kim is still looking at the financials, and we have a brief survey that's going to be going out to families to see In terms of activities, what type of fee structure there would be support for, so that we might be able to generate, that's one of the commitments we made, was to see if we could generate a little revenue to offset the expenditures with our co-curricular program. So we're doing that as well. And so then with that, I'll turn it over to Steve.
Just in case someone doesn't know who you are, could you introduce
Steve
yourself?
Cashman, principal with Cashman Stoller Group, we're an architectural firm for the district. And first, I'd like to give a little introduction about what I'm going to be presenting tonight. We've obviously been generating and distributing to the board over the last week to 2 weeks a lot of information regarding this study. The study in general terms is called a renovation and replacement study. It focused on the two elementary schools, on the South School and on the high school. And I kind of want to go back and how we got to this study. This really has its genesis, probably back 2007 or so during the facility committee. There was always a big question that was hanging in the group, is especially discussing Manning, is Manning ever going to be replaced, or should we just renovate Manning? So, is it renovation the smartest move, or should you replace the school because it's your largest and oldest elementary school? So that was one question that was kind of lingering out there a long time. As the facility committee focused on the high school, the peculiar nature of the open classrooms at the high school and their kind of educational detriment was really highlighted. And that was another question that kind of emerges: how much does it cost to close those classrooms up? Because it was actually fascinating when I first walked through the high school, the fact that they were still the way they originally configured. And as we looked at it more closely, we could see the reason why, and it was because there was no easy fix. The junior high was designed at the same time, was an open plan, did not have enclosed classrooms, but because it was a flat roof with typical classroom ceilings, it was very easy, or relatively easy, to go in there and to divide and close those classrooms like they did at the junior high. At the high school, because it's a large sloping concealed spline ceiling, there's sprinklers at the high school which are not in existence at the junior high. It was a much more expensive and challenging project. If you're familiar with, and when we toured it, you saw that some of the perimeter classrooms, there was what I call kind of a half-hearted attempt to try to enclose them, but they did things like, leave the top of the walls partially open because they couldn't close it up without having to move sprinkler heads, move light fixtures, dealing with the mechanical system. So it was just too high of a hurdle, and they never did it. So that was another big question. Is it a $100,000 problem, $1 million, $10 million? How much is it? So those were two big questions, and when we first came to you with this study, we were looking a lot, mostly at Manning, then it kind of expanded to look at Miller. Initially, we're talking about replacing Miller or renovating it. Revised our proposal to look at studying just renovating Miller. We also then, at your request, added a look at South. So those are what are included. I need to emphasize that it's a study. Even though you may see drawings that show walls and doors and windows, the biggest reason we do that is we found through our experience that to not put mouse to screen and to draw something, you end up with cost estimates, conceptual estimates that are really worthless, because you don't spend enough time to really think about what you're getting into and the difficulties or the ease of that work. So you can't do any takeoffs. You pretty much are doing square foot cost budgeting. And you've probably talked with your neighbors, well, how much does an addition cost? So many dollars a square foot, or you're going to do a kitchen, it's going to cost you X. It's really dangerous to go forward with facility projects for schools, especially based on just a broad brush square foot approach, because they're only as good as the effort you put into it. And if you're only talking about square foot costs, you're not putting a whole lot of effort into it. And the biggest danger is you agree to go forward on a project based on that, and you find out you don't have adequate funds to do what you really need to do. So what we did in this study was I went back, because I was on the facility committee. There was a lot of discussion about all the buildings. I tried to incorporate in some of the different scenarios some of the things that we had talked about. Like an example is Manning. In no school design guidelines do they recommend putting the principal's office on an alley. It's just, it's poor supervision, it's, it's just bad design. So we talked as a committee, well, obviously, we can figure out how to get the principal's office facing Linden, which is the address of the school and the main, exposure for the school. So I wanted to at least show, one possible option. And I specifically on these design concepts, when we were talking about renovations, I call them Concept A because that's what they are. We start at A and we work our way down the alphabet. This is one possible solution out of 25, 50. I mean, I'd say with a typical project, we get about, if it's what I'd call fairly difficult, about halfway into the alphabet. We've gone in projects where we've gone back and we start back to double A. And, that's not unusual. And because you really need to spend the time with paper and pencil and review meetings and everything to make sure what you're doing is the right solution for the district today and 25 years out. Because schools are very, they're not the Taj Mahals. They're very utilitarian structures. Any investment you make in a school building needs to basically outlast everybody in the room, because you just can't be doing things and redoing them in school design. So the commitment, they need to be flexible. They need to take care of your current educational needs, but have enough flexibility in them so that future boards, future educators can figure out how to teach that the way they'll teach in the future. These buildings, started in the 20s, in the 40s. Every decade you have something. Education has changed dramatically. Forget the 20s, but just from the 50s to today, the way you teach children and the services delivered to them are totally different. So that's really important when you look at these drawings. Please, I hope you have lots of criticisms of them, because we didn't have the luxury of really having a client to design for. We really kind of had to use, working with Mike, because Mike's been involved with these buildings a lot. We toured through, Pete Wetzel is with Executive Construction, Inc. Pete is a leader in this construction management firm. We've done a number of projects together. I really value their expertise in construction cost estimating. They're experts at it. They're very thorough at it. And I needed their involvement, so they're one of our team members. We had a team of mechanical, electrical, plumbing engineers, fire protection engineers that helped us develop scopes of work. Looking at the buildings and going, okay, what is the condition of the electrical service at Manning? Can we add on to it? Do we have to replace it? What are our options? From there, all the way through, plumbing, mechanical, fire suppression. We also toured with subcontractors. We had, fire protection contractors, demo, mechanical, electrical, with us walking every room in the building so that they could really understand what they were getting into, so that as we put together these conceptual designs, that they knew enough about the context that they could put together an estimate that has some value. So conceptual is a really important word in this. This is not the solution. This is just a study. My hope is this is a starting point for this group and for the community to go forward and figure out, what do you want to do? Also, it's important, and this is in the executive summary, but when we were looking at this, since we didn't have the luxury of really going through and having months and months of design meetings with all kinds of committees, when we had to make a choice, we decided to look at this at, okay, if we're going to take Manning and we're going to renovate it. We're not just, obviously Manning, Mike spends a lot of time over there doing repairs. The old galvanized water supply for the domestic water, they're terrible. To renovate a bathroom that's connected to terrible plumbing supplies doesn't make any sense. So there's obviously infrastructure work there, but to just do infrastructure work and not impact the classrooms and improve the learning environment, I think is a major mistake. So as I go through this, I want to use the drawings as kind of a start at the beginning, work all the way through the drawings, and just give you an overview, because there's an awful lot to go through here. And then I'd be happy to come back to the beginning and then respond and answer questions and take it from there. But it's conceptual. It's one look at it. But it was important. If I turn to Pete and say, what's it cost? He's like, what's what cost? I need to give him some definition so that he can base it on something. So this is like a snapshot. It's a study. It's one concept that we put dollars to. But back to like the renovation scenarios, we looked at Manning and tried to improve it from end to end. So like you're familiar with the tours of Manning, the original 1920s section, there's some very small, tight classrooms there. So in looking at the building, as you go to the north, the classrooms improve. It's kind of, as the decades went on, they get bigger, they're better classrooms. So We made some assumptions, and I made 1,000 assumptions during the study, but the assumption was, let's move the classroom functions out of the oldest portion of the building, get those in the better portions where we have larger, more appropriate classrooms. They're actually good classrooms. And take those spaces, renovate them because there's wood studs. I mean, get them down to outside wall, start over, and make those spaces where you have resources for students, student services, DHH, other functions that can work very well in that area, but move those kids into a better spot. I made an assumption with Manning about moving the administration out. In this concept, we were moving them to south. But in my mind, Manning, there's no elbow room, and we need to create elbow room in order to improve the educational environment. The business office is in a great classroom. It's one of your better classrooms, and there's adults sitting in it. I mean, doing good work, but that should be a classroom. So we moved kids into there. We moved Kevin out of the school over to south so that we could take that space, which is immediately adjacent to the library, and create a computer lab that's integrated into the library. In a way, net new space. There's a corridor there, which you might be familiar with, that can kind of shortcut back to Kevin's office. It's totally wasted space. That then becomes part of the library. So lots of assumptions. I'll start at the beginning. We'll kind of walk through, and then please, when I get to the end, then anywhere you want to go, we have all the drawings here. I can bring up the cost estimates. We can look at that. And with that, we'll have fun looking at plenty of things here. So hold on. So for each one, we kind of started kind of macro to micro. This is a satellite photo of Manning. This is helpful. In many cases, like you don't have the documents we need to truly do a detailed study, so we use satellite photography. We use some old life safety drawings to come up with where the property lines are, what's going on here. But this gives some reference to how the school is currently functioning with basically green space and playground to the north, a playground and green space to the east, and then a fairly large elementary school in a very small site. You are unique in any district I've worked with where you have, even though South is currently closed, you had 3 elementary schools with very different sizes. Typically, when you go to a school district, they tend to have like an average size. There's usually anomalies because of growth in towns, but they might be 45, 55,000, somewhere in that range, but here you go, 20, 30, almost 70. So big differences in size, which is unique to this district. So this is the existing site. In this concept day, we did a number of small additions in addition to renovating. And we'll look at this more closely, but there's basically one addition off on Linden, which is trying to create a front door or a appropriate entrance to the school that is, number one, accessible. I mean, it's a challenging building because it's a half a story up, and you have basically a full story down underground and another story up. So it's a 3-story building. So we basically create a new addition that provides a new principal's office. There's an addition on the back end to provide some additional space for services. So that again, we can create some better space within the building. There's some small additions on the northwest and the southwest that are for mechanical. I know this from experience working on old buildings that coming in with mechanical systems and ventilation in an old building is really challenging because there's not the head height. It wasn't designed for it. I mean, basically, your ventilation in that building is open a window. And that applies whether you're talking summer or January. And if you're bringing in a new system, the ducts are large, and you tend to, if you bring them all in one spot, you're literally talking ducts that could be 5 feet by 5 feet. They're huge. There's no way to get them through a building. So the best approach is to kind of divide and conquer. So having those 3 additions off the backside allow us to create smaller ducts, come into the building. Will also facilitate phasing, because if you're going to renovate this building, and this applies to most of the projects that we're talking about here, you're talking about 2 summers and a full school year. During the 2 summers would be the most extensive work. Like the first summer would be building additions, starting the renovation, maybe getting a third or halfway into some renovation work. Then during the school year, if those additions are under cover and are enclosed, work could continue in the addition separate from the students, so the contractors can keep working, and then when you hit that second summer, it's a mad dash to finish the renovation and finish those additions. So you straddle, 2 summers and a full school year. So this is, and then on the south side, there's an addition. There's an area on the southwest corner of the gym, which was an old locker room area when it was a junior high. It's really underutilized. It's kind of roughly storage. It also creates a really dangerous spot in that alley. I mean, I don't even go out that way. Even if I want to, I go out another way because it's such a blind spot. So what we're proposing here is knocking down that area, replacing it with an addition that would provide some multi-purpose space, also provide some covered waiting areas because that's your bus queuing, and then free up that corner so you can have some sight lines. Also, I guess back to the site, if we're going to put the front entrance on Linden, we need to get the visitors over on Linden. They can't be parking in the alley and walking around the building. So we basically create, you can see across the street, 15 diagonal spaces for visitor parking. We also create a drop-off lane in front of the building, similar to what you have over at Miller, which is, all new school design have drop-off for students, try to separate buses and students. So we're trying to create that here in a limited site along Linden. These are the existing floor plans. I'll kind of move quickly through here. The only thing I'd like to point out on this is just the dates. This is the original portion of the building, 1927. There was a very small addition of classrooms done in the 40s, and then they built the gymnasium. In the mid-50s, they built this northern section, and then the last addition was in 63 to the far north. This is the second or the first floor. And then this is the upper floor. It's roughly, a 66,000 square foot building. This is the lower level plan. This is the first floor plan and the upper level plan. And we can come back and talk about this later, but what we basically created here is a new principal's office suite with an elevator that goes, it's a one-door elevator that goes 3 stops, so it goes to the basement level, the first floor level, and the upper level. Because of the gymnasium being at grade, which is like a half a level down, there's another small elevator that really only goes 1 story, but it has 2 doors and 3 stops. So that provides inside accessibility. Unfortunately now, if there's somebody with a disability, you're taking them out through the kindergarten classroom, down a very terrible ramp, outside, down the sidewalk, into the gym, and then reversing that to get them back in the building. This is the kind of access that you really should have into the building. There's some color coding here, which is looking at yellow is light renovation, where, like an example, are those north classrooms from the 1963 edition. They're decent classrooms. We need to do some, they have lay-in ceilings, they have not brand new light fixtures, but they have newer light fixtures, but we need to get into those ceilings, put in a new sprinkler system. You do have fire suppression in some portions of the building, but it's not throughout the building. It doesn't meet any current codes. For both Manning and Miller, in the renovation scenarios, we're bringing in a new fire suppression system throughout the building to bring it up to current standards. We would be, to do a renovation at this extent, you'd be forced to by the state. The green is kind of medium level, and this is an example. This area here, this is the upper level. This is where there used to be old science labs, and right now there's a special ed room, a computer lab, and a gifted room. To create 2 good-sized classrooms, and those are good-sized classrooms, we basically need to gut that from wall to wall, take out those old cabinets and sinks that were abandoned in place, and we can create 2 new classrooms in the better part of the building, and then basically those student services like gifted and special move into either the 1920s portion or into the addition. There's some demolition drawings. This is really information that we needed for our group, where it shows what walls are being removed. We have some additional drawings, which I don't even think are, this might not be in your packet. These were ones we were doing at the end of our cost estimate, which basically show gross square footage of renovated area, gross square area of the additions, and that was some data that, as we were late in our cost estimating, I needed to generate for ECI. Okay, and this brings us to Miller. This is a satellite view of Miller. Miller is a much larger site compared to Manning. The existing school was built in both the 50s and in the 70s. There's a large green space to the south. This is the drop-off drive that, I don't know what year that went in, Mike, but that's a fairly recent addition where they created an area for parent drop-off. This was actually done last summer because the playground is being renovated. In both renovation scenarios, currently at the elementary schools, you have zero stormwater management. You know, basically, you were impacted by it at Manning. You used to dump your downspouts out onto the alley, which goes into a combined sewer. And was it the village or the county that forced you to disconnect? The county basically forced you, you know, it's an odd scenario. The roofs slope towards the alley. You pick up the water there, you run through the building with pipes, and then you dump the water on the east side on Linden. Because you couldn't dump it into those combined sewers. It creates flooding in basements. It's a big problem. So on both of these projects, we're carrying, you know, fairly significant costs to do stormwater containment. In a nutshell, on any of these sites, if you can picture this, during a big rainstorm, any impervious surface, parking lot, roofs, sidewalks, you need to hold that water and release it through something usually not bigger than a 3-inch pipe. They want you to basically create your own pond and hold it because it's this immediate release. As we came out and we paved everything over in the suburbs, we've created, you know, just too quick of a movement from rain event to streams, and we create flooding. So you basically hold the water. We have, in both, like, you have very little space on both sites, so we've done underground containment, I think, at both. At Manning. But we've done detention at Miller. So Miller, an example would be the Miller-Myler area, that we would drop that down. You know, during a rainy day like today, there could be standing water in a portion of it, and during a heavy rain, it would literally fill up partially with water, but you basically would hold that, and it would slowly dump out. I think even Mike talked about this in the past at the junior high. The ball fields that are to kind of the southwest of the school, there's a softball field that's in better shape. It's on higher ground. Then there's a field at the lowest spot that the geese love. That is stormwater management at the junior high. The downside is that one field is usually, it seems like it's out of use. You know, maybe in the middle of the summer it's useful, but during the school year it seems pretty out of use. This is about just under a 32,000 square foot building, 2 stories. Ironically, when it was, the construction drawings showed it being flipped. So the gym's facing the west and not being half a story underground. It was at grade. My guess is that they must have had financial challenges, and they saved a little bit of money by dropping it down, you know, roughly 3.5 to 4 feet below grade, because that cuts about 3 feet, you know, off of the top of the building. You got to pour foundations anyway, so they save some money, but it creates today an accessibility problem on all levels versus just the second floor. On this project, again, Miller is challenged. It has a principal's office that's, you know, a full story up and at the back of the building with no supervision of what's happening at the entrance or much of the school. So in this scenario, we basically did a 1-story addition to the north for a new principal's office. We did an addition to the south, and then a couple small additions for mechanical, electrical. This was an interesting one because I mean, there was a lot of talk. There was probably more talk about Miller or Manning because Manning obviously is an older building and has a bigger student body. But in the discussions about Miller, the things that jumped out is the fact that the library is really not even close to what the library is at Manning. I mean, ironically, when I first went in there, we were walking around the building. I was with Mike and with Maureen, and I thought we were going to go into a storage room because the original construction drawing said storage room, and that was the library. I mean, that school, when it was built, did not have a library and did not have a kindergarten room. The kindergarten room is below grade, which is not recommended. Kindergarten room should be at grade level, should have direct access to the exterior so that you're not exiting through a corridor. So we tried to get at a couple deficiencies, and also the art music room. I mean, that's a fascinating combination, but that, what I would call like a, you know, again, a storage room off of the gymnasium, currently functions as the art music room. In my mind, that's not even close to equitable about what's being delivered at Manning. I mean, Manning, you have actually a junior high level music room, and you have a much larger dedicated art room, even though it's in the basement level or the lower level, it's a decent art room. So I wanted to try to replicate those services. In a district like this, especially you have different size schools, different ages, you can never make them exactly the same, but I think it's important as you move forward to come up with a determination of what you think the standard should be at your elementary schools, and as much as possible, try to at least be equitable. So that if you have a dedicated music room at Manning, well, then you should have one at Miller. So I made that assumption. Whether you agree with it or not, that's what this design's based on. So when we jump to the plans, these are the existing drawings. In this addition, we basically created the new principal's office here to the north. Miller, I initially thought it was going to be easier, but it was harder to put an elevator in Miller than it is at Manning. Because Manning is, you have the one exception with the gym. But the tricky part here is you have to reach the lobby level, the lower level, and the upper level. And there's really only one area in the school you can do that, which is at the lobby. So it was more of a challenge because ideally when we look at doing elevator additions, especially on schools, you try to put them outside the building so you don't take any square footage. There's no real way to do that at Miller. You have to be in the building, which it makes the elevator project much more challenging and expensive, but the biggest problem is it takes space away. So in the concept, we basically had to take what is the current kindergarten classroom, which in my mind really should be relocated anyway because you want that at grade. It should be bigger. It should have an appropriate bathroom. That bathroom was done after the fact. So we basically are taking out kind of an area there to put an elevator in that has two doors on the front and back. When you get on it at the lobby, you go down like half a level, about 40 inches to get to the lower level, and then you go, 3/4 of a story up to get to the second level, or the first floor, second floor. So that's where this elevator is, and then we had to basically create a connecting corridor to get you from that elevator to those levels. So in this renovation scenario, the kindergarten is here over in what is currently a combination faculty lounge and I think a accelerated math area. We wanted to put it here, and it could be, there's other options, is that we could basically, there's some plumbing there, and we'd be able to create a bathroom, an ADA accessible bathroom appropriate for kindergarten level, and we'd be able to then take the sanitary lines outside the building and be able to renovate that. We basically carved up the center section to create that accelerated space. And then here at the south, we have on the lower level a library media center adjacent to a computer lab. And on the upper level, we have art and music. In both schools, see those bathrooms, Manning is a large elementary school. I mean, it's almost equaling your high school as far as population. The bathrooms, you are just barely getting by. You don't have enough bathrooms for those number of students. So you'll see on the Manning design, that center section of bathrooms, we not only gutted it, we gutted it and expanded it into the addition so that we can get more fixtures. And then a new bathroom design, I mean, it just doesn't make sense in school design, or airports or anyplace else, to have doors going into bathrooms. They become, you're spreading disease in the winter. A good school bathroom in today's day and age should have hands-free faucets, urinals, flush valves. You should have wash stations instead of individual valves. They're less expensive in total to plumb. They're easier to maintain. You can get more kids through there. And then you should have a vestibule with privacy screens, not doors, because then the kids are able to get in and get out. From a supervision level, a teacher could stand in the hallway and tell if there's anything happening in the bathroom. You have less problems with anybody vandalizing. Throughout the project, all these two schools, all the bathrooms are ADA compliant. They would be new. So we'd be able to take care of students, staff, visitors would have accessible bathrooms. Here's the upper level. You can see the principal's suite is just one story. It could be two-story. I mean, it's possible that we could connect to it on the upper level, but I chose not to show that in here, but that is an option you would have. The additions could be anywhere. You could add classrooms on Miller. If you decided you want to increase the enrollment at Miller and take pressure off of Manning, you could do that. And the one thing I want you to take away from the study is when you see the cost estimates, you'll see, some scary numbers, I mean, compared to what we were talking about earlier tonight. I mean, they're big numbers, but it gives you an idea of the kind of investment. You certainly could do parts of those projects. I mean, there's one reason that the most common school projects done throughout the state and pretty much throughout the country are renovations and additions. It's much easier to bite and chew small projects over, a period of time than having to commit to bulldozing a school and building a brand new school. It spreads that load, the burden out over, in a way, sometimes generations of taxpayers versus one big project. It'd be great. I mean, people would love to just knock down old schools and build new ones, but it's very expensive, and, it's not like in your case, it wouldn't just solve one problem. Like, say you decided to knock down Manning. Well, then you're going to have a brand new school at Manning. That means that what we're proposing here for Miller is likely insufficient, because you need to have equity for your taxpayers, and wherever they live in town, they need to be getting the same level of education. So a new school gives you the ability to have services and designs and stuff that you don't have in older buildings. You would be under pressure to probably spend more money on Miller and do it at the same time, so that you open up the new school and are heavily renovated and add it on to Miller so that they open up and they're equitable. So it's something to keep in mind. But you can look at it and you can see that, roughly new construction, depends on the size of the project, but it tends to run in the high $200 to $300 square foot cost to do a project. And this estimate's totally in line with our costs on projects. I mean, this is not just data. This is, real experience. And then it's actually bids. Like, we've taken, and they've done takeoffs, so they know, based on what you see here, they've taken off doors, they've taken off square foot of exterior wall, foundations, excavation, finishes. Those are numbers. And then we took summit trades, like, say, fire suppression, and actually gave the drawing to a contractor and had them do a proposal for it. So it's, these numbers, you can then look at and say, okay, if you're renovating an area, like you wanted to renovate, say, part of Miller, but not all of it, you know that if you budgeted somewhere in the, $150 to $200 range, that would be, per square foot, you'd be able to attack those areas and probably have sufficient funds. So you can take this data and interpolate or extrapolate from it to kind of think of other scenarios. I mean, south. You could choose to do a different scenario at south, like add on to south. Well, you could look at it and say, okay, if you took the square footage of south and you did a heavy renovation of it, and then you added X number of square feet, you're going to be somewhere in the ballpark of what kind of investment that would be. And that's really a big point. What's nice about the study, it's not just one building. There's a number of different buildings and different types of projects, so it should give you a pretty good idea of, as you move forward on facilities, on what the cost is to do whatever it is you choose to do.
Steve, I have a couple questions
Sure.
for you.
Sure.
Okay. First of all, on the renovation plans here, did we take into consideration grade level centers?
We did not, but we talked about it. It's interesting, this came up, I think, in either one or two of the board meetings I was attending where you were talking about grade level centers. And especially after going through this exercise, it's interesting. I think these costs could be applied. If you chose to do grade level centers, I think these estimates, you'd be somewhere within striking distance on whatever it was you chose to do. The most interesting part, as I got into this more, was I think the buildings almost determine how you would do grade level centers just because of their nature and their design. I think Manning, just by the fact that it actually was a junior high, it has multiple levels. It's in an urban site, a suburban, but more urban site. It is more appropriate for upper level students than Miller. It makes sense. And if you really were going to say just split it into like a K2, 3-5, that the K2 would be Miller, in my opinion. And you take the older students and they'd be at Manning, because you want, especially with young children, because traffic. I mean, you want kindergarten classrooms and those kind of uses away from traffic or the chance for some kid running away. You need a quiet neighborhood, and that Miller is more quiet neighborhood than Manning. You don't have alleys and more of an urban area, and then you also have a smaller building. I think it would make more sense. You have the ability on the west end; those 3 rooms are at grade. So you could very easily convert those 3 spaces into 3 really nice kindergarten classrooms, and then maybe, depending on how your counts worked out, maybe take another one and do some kind of terracing and ramping so that you can have direct exit. So in the event of a fire, that kindergarten classroom is not going into the building, but it's going straight out that door. I mean,
Okay. So the plans that you drafted, would they really have to be changed all that much?
You'd have to you'd redesign them to some degree, but I think the dollar amounts of the renovation, you're going into Miller and putting in fire suppression. It doesn't care whether you're a grade level center or a neighborhood elementary school. I also think, I talked earlier about flexibility. I think if you chose to do grade level centers, you'd want to always be thinking, how can we make these so it could turn back into a neighborhood school if a future board and community chose that's what they want to do. You want flexibility. So, which would probably be pretty easy to do because you're starting with a neighborhood school, and if you convert it into a grade level center, it would be pretty easy to get it back into an elementary school. You just want, as we would go into design, you'd want to really think it through. You don't want to look at, staffing and, what the impact is on from an operational point of view.
Okay, I had one other question. These plans had taken the assumption that administration would be moved to South School. What if the board decided to sell South School?
If you were going to follow, like in Manning's case, you'd need to find another home for them.
Yeah.
I mean, they could stay, but I mean, they certainly could stay at Manning. But something's got to give. And the downside is you're talking about one of your best classroom spaces being used by adults, and you have a computer space that is as far away as, it's a story away from the media center, and, you could improve Manning for students today and the future by just making that change. So whether you could find another home for them, you could look at, is there a way
High
to
school? What about
the
moving
junior
them to
high or the high school? I mean, because this was discussed before, I don't think at a board level, but it was a discussion as we kind of toured buildings, is, you could look at the junior high and take the southeast area where you're leasing out space to Sasset, and you could create an administrative area there, maybe a little circle drive, or so it's in the school, but it's separate, so if adults are coming, they're not having to come through the school to get to the administration. At the high school, there's an area on the northern side of the kind of athletic core where you could, it's kind of a maze back there, but you could kind of take it from outside wall to outside wall and knock it out, maybe do a small little entrance addition or something, and you could create a spot, and then that north parking lot is maybe where visitors go to administration. I think you certainly could find a home for them.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Sure.
Just to tag on to that, obviously, this is a jumping off point for work that you need to do with a facilities committee going forward in terms of you're doing a lot more work about design and especially in terms of the renovation. Certainly one of the scenarios, and not suggesting that I'm for it one way or the other or advocating it in any way, but one of the scenarios I would like you to look at as you go through that process is the notion that there's an available strategic decision that says rather than spend $2.5 million in South making it administrative space and an early childhood center, there's a strategic decision that says, sell South, avoid the 2.5 in renovation, take some cash, and then look at a design either in the high school or probably at the high school. It could potentially incorporate the administrative personnel. So, because it represents net dollar savings.
Absolutely.
And
even like South, you could look at South and say, okay, we want to move the administration, but we don't want to spend that much money. Well, you can start there and go, okay, well, let's not do this.
Yeah.
Like one thing, this is where our assumptions, we had to make decisions about, what the level of renovation is. Like an example is, Manning and Miller. Both in this scenario, these both have, new mechanical systems. Like we're reusing a boiler at Miller. We're repurposing the steam boilers to hot water at Manning. They currently have hot water, have no air conditioning. In this scenario, air conditioning is part of this. I mean, I personally believe that air conditioning should be in schools because if it was 50 degrees in a classroom, is that student learning? I mean, they might be, but not as well as when it was 70 degrees. And when it's 90 degrees in a room, I think the same thing applies. I mean, I've literally seen teachers with water bottles going to kids, not in your district, but in other districts, because they were worried about dehydration in the classroom. Well, that is not optimum learning environment. I mean, if you were at a conference, you would leave. I mean, you'd go out to the bathroom and just quietly take your stuff and not come back in the room if it was that uncomfortable. It's hard to concentrate. So we've taken that. The south is a great example. The northern half, which is kind of down a half a level, there was money early, earmarked in that 5-year plan to replace the univentilators. If you were simply going to rent the space out, I would recommend that you just replace the univentilators. Because, number one, your landlord, it's not an early childhood center. Univentilators are the least expensive and the cheapest, with emphasis on cheapest, mechanical solution to, schools. They're noisy. I mean, they're really bad, and they're especially bad for younger children, and especially for children with any kind of, learning needs, whether you're talking language needs or whatever. They're deafening. It's not good design. So in our model, we're replacing those with ducted systems. So I'm just saying, we tried to set the bar at a decent, higher level. You could back off and choose not to do something. And you could look, and I think if you look at the line items in the cost estimates, you can go, oh my God, that's a lot of money. Is there a way we could spend less? Yes. And that's why people do renovations, is they might look at it and say, okay, that's $2.5 million. They go, well, we can't do it all now. What can we do this year for $1 million, and what can we defer for 5 years from now? And then you come up with a phased approach. So at least you have a map, and you know where you're ending up, and you do this project, but you don't do the whole thing because you just don't want to spend those kind of resources. Or you can, sell the building. You can do other options. And here we are at South. A small site with a basically playground to the south. No additions contemplated on this. This project was a little bit more of a challenge because you actually have what I'd call fairly insufficient electrical service for a school. But I mean, it's a very small school. It was truly a 2-room schoolhouse when it opened. And it is, you're limited to what you can do mechanically here in a way that you're not at Manning and Miller because of the nature of the power that's being taken off the alley. It's basically residential grade power. If you were going to do something significant in investment here beyond what we're proposing, you would need to go over to Cass and and work with ComEd and bring in new service that would be able to support a bigger, a chiller, a bigger mechanical system, a more robust system. In this, we basically took this lower level for record storage. At Manning, you're kind of familiar how the records are on the lower level in the northeast corner of the building. There's a conference room there, and then the records are back in the corner. We basically are moving them over here. This lower level at South, I mean, its best use is storage. It really shouldn't be used for much else. So this is record storage. On the first floor, basically are showing, kind of gutting out these 3 classroom areas to create a new administrative office, renovating the restrooms here, taking these 2 rooms to create, to turn it back into the original kindergarten room. And then you can see these small little kind of enclosures are bringing in new mechanical but quieter, where it's a ducted system versus just a large squirrel cage blower and a univentilator, at the window wall. Let's see. Okay, then we're at the high school. And I was thinking, Mike, I should have had this up when you were talking fences before. This project, this was something, I did some confirmation of numbers that we received back in 2009, 2010 from D. James Builders with Pete Wetzel and ECI. But this question was asked previously about, enclosing these classrooms. And 2 summers ago, D. James Builders was the general contractor that was doing your summer work. So towards the end of the project, we basically started picking their brain about, what would it take to enclose this? And, they had trades on site, and they basically, did you a favor, a no-cost estimate. We put together some quick concepts. We gave them some outline specifications so they understood what to estimate, and then they put together a cost estimate for us. At this current layout, you have one of the most unusual principal suites ever in the center here, with offices with no ceilings, no privacy, amazing. And then you have the whole, what I call the south wing, which is your main classroom wing, which is really, it's a problem that has to be solved. I mean, I think if you're an A student, you probably make it by because you're just an A student and you study hard and you concentrate. But when I'm in this area, especially when you're here during the school day, I really worry for students that are, C, D students that are trying to make it. It's so loud, it's so distracting, it's like the worst educational environment. It needs to be improved. And I think if it had a flat ceiling and was easy, it would have been done. This building opened in the early 70s, it would have been done in the late 70s. I mean, it would have been solved that quickly. But it was just too daunting and too big of a problem. I mean, you can see it's a $4 to $5 million problem to get at it. I mean, you could choose to do this and not do the principal's office, but we're proposing both. But enclosing that would be big. We kind of, in this concept, we just made 3 assumptions. Number one, we got to find a way to enclose those classrooms. So this is the current layout, a little closer. Here's the concept A. And these could also be re-subdivided. I mean, it would really be driven by the principal, the department chairs, and by a design team on how many classrooms, what are they teaching, how should they be grouped. But the idea was to create a classroom wing, in the kind of true sense of the word, that is separate from the commons. That you have, these would be full height partitions here at the end, so that once you go to lunch period, Steve could close those doors. They'd be on automatic hold opens, during most of the day because kids would just come and go. But you could close those doors, and then the sound of the students in lunch would not be infiltrating back in here and causing such a problem. And then you'd also have the ability, the added benefit, if you had some kind of critical incident, you could close those doors and have the ability to not only secure a classroom, but you could secure a wing. So we basically came in here, knocked a bunch of walls down. All those ceilings, I mean, it's fascinating to look at the building, that structure. There's a photograph that's in the lobby, and to see it before they put any finishes up. And it looks like a 2-ring circus, or maybe a 3-ring circus. I mean, it's a huge tent-like steel structure with that concealed spline ceiling, fiberglass board ductwork, and sprinklers. And the sprinklers are fascinating because when I first went in there, I'm like, oh, how forward thinking. Because you have sprinklers in a school built in the 70s, which was not done. My engineer thinks the reason is the code officials had no way to figure out how to judge this building. They were used to looking at a double-loaded corridor, 1-hour partitions, doors with closers, and here there's no walls. Where's the corridor? So there's sprinklers only in basically the west part of the building. In gymnasiums, there's no sprinklers. The downside is if it kept in its current configuration, you don't get any benefits in the building code to having sprinklers. It's partially sprinkled. Another anomaly, which we found when we were talking with the fire chief, and Mike's known this for years, this probably was allowed back then, but they brought water service in for the sprinklers in 3 locations. It's a disaster for the fire department because if the alarm goes off there, they basically need 3 pumpers. They need to bring in other villages just to answer a call here. It should have 1 service. So what we have in this estimate is basically, you can kind of imagine taking these sprinkler rooms and going out and linking them together with a new fire main, and then having 1 spot that has the flow valves and all the controls, and then modifying the sprinklers. The sprinkler heads, even our contractors, they just shook their head. They didn't even know what they were, what model, what manufacturer. So all the heads would have to be replaced. And then you would see, like you do in a tenant build-out, we would have to be relocating heads, modifying some branches to deal with enclosed classrooms. Because, like an example, there's a classroom, I think it's this classroom right here, where there's a wall goes up and there's a notch out of the top. And a couple notches. One, there's a light fixture in the way, so they just notched it around the light fixture. And the other one, there was a sprinkler that if they had taken the wall to the ceiling, the wall was too close to the sprinkler on one side and was then deficient on the other side. So they left the wall down to allow the sprinkler to function. I don't know that the fire department would love that, but that's what's existing there now. We're basically bringing in natural light. It's an amazing building. You recall, was it last summer when we did the window replacement? I was waiting for the contractor across the junior high, and he's like, what's that building over there? I go, oh, that's the high school. He goes, it has no windows. I go, I know, it has no windows. And to a window contractor, that was shocking. But I think, installing windows around the perimeter, and basically, in this, for this estimate, we basically had them around here, We obviously have them at the principal's office, and we took them to this point. We didn't take them over here into the shop area because I just don't know what the future holds there, and, you know, we kind of just decided we were going to stop here. Bringing in natural light, having the ability to open a window, I mean, that would change the...
That could be administrative space.
Yeah, could be, exactly. That would change the whole feeling of that high school 100%. We also then, because you have interior classrooms here, these kind of dashed squares around the perimeters dropping in skylights, and then in those classrooms, we'd have clear story upper windows so that we could bring some natural light into those rooms also. You do have, you know, if you look at the building, there's a series of monitor windows that are up high, kind of as a kidney being up high here. They just don't, not enough light